Washington County Quorum Court.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call this April meeting of the Quorum Court to order and welcome everyone in attendance. Tonight, the prayer and the pledge is going to be handled by J.P. Lisa Ecke. Ms. Ecke.
Thank you, Judge, for the honor. For such a time as this, I ask you to join me in prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lisa. We now have the roll call. Carly.
Daniel Balls.
Here.
Harvey Bowman.
Here.
Rick Cochran.
Here.
Robert Dennis.
Here.
Lisa Ecke.
Here.
John Furman.
Here.
Ann Harbison.
Here.
Sharon Lloyd.
Here.
Tom Lundstrom.
Here.
Eva Joel Maxwell. Butch Pond.
Here.
Bill Ussery.
Quorum present. Next thing we have is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to? I have a motion. I have a second.
I have to second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda has been adopted. And the next thing we have is the approval of the minutes. These are the minutes of the March the 19th regular meeting has been distributed. Are there any corrections to be made? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as read?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you. Did you girls get that? They have sustained because they were not here to approve the minutes, so, okay. Next thing coming, Mr. Cochran, we have the finance report.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Short list tonight. Item 6.1. Steve, would you give it a read, please?
An ordinance reducing the amount of $43,451 from full-time salary line items in various county budgets and restoring those funds to unappropriated reserves, appropriating the amount of $51,998 from unappropriated reserves to various budgets for 2015, and suspending budget controls and any applicable JSAP policy to change the title of a personnel position in the road department budget for 2015. Article 1. Appropriations are hereby reduced by the total amount of $43,451 from full-time salary line items in the various county budgets for 2015 as outlined in Attachment E-A and summarized by fund as follows. These funds shall be restored to unappropriated reserves in all funds. General, $23,951. Road, $8,000. Jail, $11,500 for total reductions of $43,451. Article 2. There is hereby appropriated the total amount of $51,998 from unappropriated reserves to line items in various county budgets as outlined in Attachment B and summarized by fund as follows for 2015. General, $23,734. Road, $10,059. Recorder's cost, $6,829. Jail, $11,376 for a total appropriation of $51,998. Article 3, budget controls and applicable JSAP policies are hereby suspended, and the title of the personnel position of heavy equipment operator lead position grade 15, slot 102, in the road department budget of the road fund is hereby changed to a heavy equipment operator 2, grade 14, for 2015.
Thank you, Steve. This ordinance is a quarterly ordinance that moves money basically in and out of unappropriated reserves and back into appropriate them. The attachments A and B, you can see the details behind showing where the money is coming and going to. And since we have Article 3 as a suspension of budget controls, it will take 10 votes to pass tonight. And the motion by Ann Harbison and second by John Furman, we approved at Finance unanimously, and I offer the motion to pass 6.1.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? With no comment, Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
John Furman,
Yes.
Ann Harbison,
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
No.
Tom Lundstrom,
No.
Eva Madison,
No.
Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell,
Yes.
Joe Patterson, Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
Yes?
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
This appropriation ordinance has passed. 6.2, Rick.
Yes, Steve, would you read 6.2, please?
An ordinance appropriating the amount of $13,623 from the general fund to the sheriff work release budget and recognizing and appropriating revenues in the drug enforcement state and drug enforcement federal funds for 2015. Article 1, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $13,623 from the general fund to the following line items in the sheriff work release budget for 2015. General supplies, $8,623, parts and repairs, $5,000, for a total appropriation of $13,623. Article 2, revenue line items in the Drug Enforcement State Fund are hereby adjusted as follows, resulting in additional revenues of $4,207 being recognized for 2015. State drug seizures, $4,283, interest income, $10, Treasurer's Commission, negative $86, for a total revenue of $4,207. Article 3, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $4,207 from the Drug Enforcement State Fund to the General Supplies line item of the Drug Enforcement State budget for 2015. Article 4, there are hereby recognized additional revenues of $18,774 in the Federal Drug Seizures revenue line item of the Drug Enforcement Federal Fund for 2015. Article 5, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $18,774 from the Drug Enforcement Federal Fund to the following line items in the Drug Enforcement Federal budget for 2015. General supplies, $18,274, other professional services, $500, for a total appropriation of $18,774.
Thank you. Thank you. This ordinance actually is a quarterly ordinance that we do after the fact, after the money has been brought in, then we know how much it is and we can appropriate the money to the work release budget. I move to pass 6.2.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? With no comments, Carla, would you call the roll?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
John Furman,
Yes.
Ann Harbison, Sharon Lloyd,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
No.
Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell, Joe Patterson, Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery, Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
Yes?
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
This ordinance is adopted. Rick?
Yes, Steve, would you please read 6.3?
An ordinance creating an additional personnel position in the public defender budget, reducing personal services line items in the public defender budget by $24,445, and appropriating the amount of $39,015 from the general fund to the public defender budget for 2015. Article 1, budget controls are hereby suspended, and the personnel position of Deputy Public Defender, position 0417006, is created in the public defender budget of the general fund for 2015. Article 2, the following personnel services line items in the public defender budget are hereby reduced by a total sum of $24,445. Salaries part-time, $20,000. Social Security matching, $1,530. Non-contributory retirement, $2,925, for a total reduction of $24,445. Article 3, there is hereby appropriated the total amount of $39,015 from the general fund to the following personal services line items in the public defender budget for 2015. Salaries full-time, position 0417006, $31,920. Social Security matching, $2,442. Non-contributory retirement, $4,653. Health insurance matching, $3,699. Life insurance, $99, for a total appropriation of $39,015.
Thank you, Steve. This 6.3 is an ordinance to request to move from a part-time to a full-time position of deputy public defender. We received many letters from attorneys and judges in favor of the request, citing increased workload over the past few years. Butch Pond moved forward to the Quorum Court with a due pass, seconded by John Furman, but the vote was not unanimous. And with that in mind, while I do support the ordinance on its merit, I do not offer the motion at this time, giving opportunity for further discussion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, Eva.
I think the point of my comment is to actually have some discussion on this, and I say that because I'm still very much undecided on this, and I'd really like to hear people's thoughts on it. I have been contacted by folks in the Public Defender's Office. I was contacted by one constituent in favor of this, and where my struggle is that I have absolutely no doubt that this position needs to be full-time. I think those of us that heard from the judges and the people involved in this process, they know that it needs to be full-time, and it probably needed to be full-time a long time before now. The struggle that I have is that the Public Defender's Office is a state function. It's not a county function. And for the most part, the Public Defender's Office is funded by the state. And I find myself particularly conflicted right now because we've finished a legislative session where virtually every other state official was given a pretty sizable raise by the new independent commission. All of our judges have received raises. Our legislators received sizable raises. We now have prosecutors asking for raises. And it seems like the public defenders are sort of being left out of that. And I'm frustrated that the state is leaving it to us. And so I come to this meeting truly undecided about how to vote. And so I would like for there to be some discussion. I know there's a lot of people here tonight interested in this very issue. And I think we owe it to them to have a debate about this. So please help convince me one way or another. Thank you.
Joe, you had your hand up, didn't you?
I would like to see another part-time. Sit there and rationalize with what we're going to do here, or what's the way it is right here. We're actually gaining 10 hours, and it's to the tune of about $27,000 by my figures. If it's, which two temps would be 75,000. And you take the one and move it, just one up there by itself is 74,000. So for $11,000, you gain 30 hours a week, which is 1,500 hours a year, and you get that for $11,000 bucks. But if you just move the one up, make that full time, and don't do anything else, you get 500 hours, and by my figure, it's going to cost about $27,000. If I'm wrong, apologize. But anyway, I can't support the permanent. I'm like everybody here. I think the state should take care of this. They put it on us. We have issues besides this. A lot of issues, I suppose. And I'm not going to say anything about any of them. But anyway, our money's down to about, Ann and I thinks about a little under $4 million, not dedicated reserves. I can remember when it was 18.3, and you can too. That's scary. Now, our numbers look good, but they better look good, because if they go like they was last year, or if we don't beat that, we had no capital purchases last year. We got problems, and we need to be thinking about that and just bite the bullet, because I know it was great last month, and it was the best it had been in a long time. I also know when you look to the Middle East, it's not too steady over there. We talked about it one time. We thought, we took guesses that it would be about $6 a gallon of fuel if something happened. No guarantee it's going to happen. No guarantee it's not. Israel cannot sit there and have nuclear missiles and bombs and all that right that close. They've already said they wasn't going to take it. So I'm not doomsday, but I just think we need to be aware that we've got. I mean, I'm concerned about our money. A little under 4, we want it to be about 10 minimum. And that's my reason for that. Anyway, I make a motion to that.
Or you're going to
To
make a
adapt
motion
that.
to go past? I'll second it.
I think we had a motion.
No,
There's a main motion, and
he's amended the motion.
I think y'all need a brand new ordinance for that. That's not an amendment. It's not. My opinion is that's not the nature of an amendment to this ordinance. You need an entirely different ordinance for that. So there's your parliamentarian's opinion,
Okay,
Joe.
that's fine.
I don't mean to step on you, but I think
I'll just
that's
vote against, that's fine.
okay.
Ann, did you have your hand up?
Well, I was going to speak to the, they've got a half-time and to hire another half-time, and that way they would have more hours for people to work. That's, since that's not an option right now, then unless we postpone this, depending on how the rest of the court feels. Anyway, I've already promised some people out there, if my vote depended on it passing today, I would vote for it, and I will stick with my commitment, but I still would rather have 2 part-time because that saves us some money. Thank you. Butch?
I believe when we discussed this in committee, it was reported to us that they were having difficulty finding attorneys that would work part-time in this situation. And just a comment, I wouldn't mind it being part-time either, but it just doesn't look like a possibility at this time. The other thing I wanted to make sure I wasn't mistaken on this. Now, we pay these part-time people by the hour. Whatever hours they work, we pay them by the hour. Now, we're moving this individual into a salaried position. Is that correct? And generally, how many hours a week do they wind up working when they're on salary?
Do we have
I
someone?
might ask Steve. I think he's got some experience in that.
Well, more than 40 hours, I think, is a fair statement of the workload. More than 40 hours a week. And I know that both from talking with folks in the public defender's office and personal experience as the former Prairie Grove city prosecutor.
And I too agree. I wish that the state would come forward and do something for us in this situation. We know they're not going to. And the other thing about it is, I know they represent a lot of indigent people, and if they have a little more time to spend and do as good a job as they possibly can, these public defenders, which I'm sure they do, there have to be some alternatives to just sending more people to our jails. I'm kind of looking at it like we either pay it now or we pay it later. It's going to come out of the general if the jail continues to grow more crowded. Thank you for your time.
Rick?
Yes. Speaking of the jails, additional staff, whether it's another person or more hours, would benefit the defendants in these cases from possibly having to spend time in jail. If you don't have your case prepared and ready to go, when you meet the judge, you may find yourself in jail until your court appearance if you don't have a way to bond out. I don't know what the savings is there, but there's money that's being spent to house the prisoners when we do that. An additional number of hours, whichever way it goes, would tend to mitigate a little bit of our expense in the jail. So to some degree, that offsets some of the cost to the position. Thank you.
John?
I guess my feeling on it is that
it's a constitutional mandate that we try to have defendants represented that can't afford to have private representation. And to me, when I go home at night and I've left the court, I'd like to think that that I could sleep well. And I think this is an issue that is critical. I guess this amount of money is something we can afford, and for that kind of level of service to the people of the county that can't really speak for themselves, I would be ashamed to vote no to this tonight. So that's my opinion.
Robert.
Thank you. I thought I got it. I remember, and y'all help me out, last time they told us that out of the 14 or 12 that we had, the county pays for 2 or 3. And so I agree that the state and the Fed should do more, but I don't believe that they're going to do more, as Butch said. And so, and there's a lot of reasons why, we may not want, you may want part-time, but I think the reason that you want a full-time, I think you get better quality of a person. That's asking, when you ask someone to work for part-time wages, you're saying pretty much that, well, you're not going to give us your best, you're just going to give us some. And I'd rather see a full-time person. So I'm for it. There's some reservations I have about it. I'm one of those guys that think, don't get yourself in trouble. You don't have to have a public defender. But as soon as I say that, my grandson will be up here looking for a public defender. And when he comes up here and gets one, I want him to have a good one. And so I think we should pay full-time for one. And that's how I feel. Thanks.
Yes, Eva.
I had mentioned at I think maybe the Finance Committee meeting where we discussed this, the conversion of the district courts to state, where the state was paying for the judges and the clerks. Right now, we split it with the cities. I know Judge Story's here. I don't think anybody knew the answer, but has that been funded for conversion in 2017? Does anybody know that's here? It has not. Okay. Well, I was going to look forward to maybe money to offset this. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, we currently pay for basically half the cost of some of the salaries with no input on what those salaries are, and we're in the process of converting all of those to being paid for by the state, which would mean money back to us. But if the legislature hasn't funded it, that's of concern. I'll also sort of add my 2 cents on the notion of a part-time position. As an overworked lawyer myself, there's not really anything. There's no such thing as a part-time law practice. You just can't do it. Even people who try to do it find themselves committing to it full-time. So I don't know that that's a very realistic solution. So thank you, Judge.
Sue.
Thank you, Madam Judge. This is becoming difficult for me, but I feel the need to explain myself. I am still not happy with the fact that our Finance Committee is not a committee of the whole, which we have an ordinance saying it is a committee of the whole. And for that reason, I have been voting against everything that comes out of Finance because I think it was inappropriately constituted. But we still don't have an AG's opinion on that. And I have to wholeheartedly agree with J.P. Dennis, what he said about the difference between a part-time employee and a full-time employee. And I frankly think having 2 part-time employees would become almost an abusive situation of loyal, hardworking people. And I think we have more respect for our county employees than to do that to them. And if we're going to have someone, I want them to be fully invested in the job, and with that, all of the benefits that come to the job. And I think we owe that to them. And having said I feel that way, I will temper my vote to an abstention. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Ann?
My objection to this doesn't have to do, well, it does have to do with the money, yes, and we're short on money. And, we have got to watch what we spend from now and to the end of the year. My objection is that people are appointed a public defender, and they represent them for that case, and they only represent them for that one case, and, they're sentenced or they, are on probation or whatever. But when they leave, they don't have an attorney. When they, that's it. That's all they're represented. I just want the whole situation overhauled. I just don't believe that because people don't have money that they are throwaway people. And I think this is, and it's not the public defender's fault. It's the situation and how this has evolved. And so, I suppose I'll go on and vote for it tonight, but I want to see some drastic change in how people are defended and, I guess, taken care of. I think we have people out there that think they're throwaway people and they don't make an effort. They don't vote. They think their vote doesn't count. So, we've got all kinds of social problems of why I want to vote against this. But no, they do need it. And so at this point, I'm going to have to agree with, I think, Eva, and when or Sue, and I can't remember which one that said this, in that we've hired 2 part-time people. They're both going to be working probably full-time. So, we do need to save money, and I think it's state responsibility, but at this point, I will support this. Thank you.
Harvey, did you have your hand up?
Not that I want to speak.
See, I knew.
You're reading my mind, Judge. I want to know if it would be possible to find a second part-time employee.
Well, I think it's certainly possible. It's again, you get what you pay for with a part-time employee. If they have another law practice, a private law practice, which they would have, they're obviously going to devote a lot more time to that private practice.
Well, that statement would imply that the part-time person you got right now is not a very beneficial contributor.
I'll have Judge Story speak to that. I think he would say otherwise.
Well,
and
I would agree.
Of the judges and the other places would. I will say this, in recent years when we have advertised and posted it, we have had very few apply. We were interviewing one a year ago, and during the interview when he saw the calendar and the court demands, he walked out of the interview and said no thank you. It is getting harder. I will also say this as far as the 40 hours worked. An attorney on a salary is considered an exempt employee, and Ms. Madison can help with that. They're not limited to 40 hours. If one week they're required to do 60 hours, then they do it, and the county does not get billed extra for it when they are salaried. Whereas if it is 2 hourly employees and it requires more time, then you get billed extra for that. But am I speaking this correctly, Ms. Madison, that, as an exempt employee, that if that full-time attorney has to do extras to cover his work or her work, then you get the same deal for it. You're not billed extra. And that's part of the problem now, is that they are having to do more work than the 30 hours, and that's not in the budget.
I guess everything I've heard about this, I desperately want to vote for this thing. But it comes back to this doggone budget, and guys, I'm telling you, I think everybody probably understands that we're under a great deal of pressure. And so I'm, just like Eve was talking about, I'm really stressed with this situation about which way to vote. I desperately want to give you the person. Matter of fact, I'd like to give you 2. But the budget limitations really is leaving me in conflict. So I haven't even decided right now how to vote.
I understand that, and I appreciate that. I will say this. This is our last safety net. This is our last resort. As Mr. Heislip told some of us in the personnel meeting last week, that the Public Defender Commission, Little Rock, asked for 46 new positions for the state, and they only received 3. And there's, in your packet, there's a letter from the Public Defender Commission. There's no more money. We will not get any more positions. We will not get any more money. And that if you don't help us, then we're going to be seriously in having a hard time meeting the demands. We're going to be having problems keeping up with our ethical responsibilities that's required. The American Bar Association gives numbers for how many they suggest that public defenders handle. For misdemeanor cases, they suggest 300 a year.
They suggest what?
300 a year. And we are way over that for our attorneys.
Okay. Will this person that you currently have on staff as part-time be able to handle 50 or 60 hours a week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Daniel?
I think it says a lot that we got letters from 9 judges and 2 prosecutors, and seeing the people that are here. I agree with John. If this is a constitutional right, we may not like it. The state left us hanging, and we're going to have to take care of this. I will be voting for it tonight, and I'm going to encourage everybody else. I hope Eva does. I know that she's on the fence. It's a tough gig. I know you guys work a lot of hours, and I know that you waited until after the legislative session, hoping that you were going to get this, and we are the last train on this. So I hope that we do go ahead and vote for you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Tom?
The thing that bothers me about these issues is increasing the size of government and the cost of government. I've been here 8 years, and I've seen about $20 million spent, which a large portion of didn't have to be spent. I'm firmly convinced of that. If that money were still in reserves where it was originally, that's the money Joe and Ann was talking about earlier, we'd have no problem with this at all. In terms of the budget, the money you're asking for is nickels and dimes. But I hear people on this court in various places say, well, we need a 1/8 of a cent sales tax. You know, and that's practically nothing, an 1/8 of a cent on a dollar. Well, it's not the 1/8 of a cent that's the problem. It's the 9.75% that you've got to add that 1/8 of a cent to. See what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And that's the problem with this. That's why I voted for the first item on this, because we're raising the cost of government $7,000 a year on a job designation. And, you know, you want to see people make good money. You want to see them happy in their job and all that. But the state's not spending any more money on the same issue. You know, they want 100 and they get 3. So I'd say they're speaking pretty loudly on the issue. You know, they're not spending any more money on these public defenders this year. So I'm like Eva, it's really a tough situation because, you know, I can sympathize with you on where you're at, but I can sympathize with the taxpayers out here paying for all this stuff all the time too. And we keep adding these a little dab here and a little dab there before the end of the year. It ends up thousands and thousands of dollars. And each one of them seems small, they seem insignificant, but you keep adding them together, and at the end of the year, like I say, they're a big issue. So that's my position, Judge. Thank you for the time.
Sharon?
Thank you, Judge. I'm agreeing with Tom here, and I've been wanting to speak out. I want to speak for the taxpayer. I would love to be the great-grandfather that could give everybody what they wanted, but there comes a time and a place when we have to finally say, we don't have the money to do these things. And I understand I'm the newbie on the court, and I have been reading this, and I have been reading the letters, and I feel like with most of them here, I sympathize with the need for it. I feel like I'm overworked. I mean, frankly. So does that mean I get a raise? You know, I mean, there has to come a time when we have to say, stop. And I'm still on the fence with it, but I have to say that I have to speak for the taxpayer, because yesterday was April 15th, you know, and I wrote a big old check. And this is money coming out of my pocket. This is money coming out of my children's pocket. And I want people defended. I don't want anybody thrown in jail or anything that doesn't need to be there. But I finally have to say, I know it's little amounts of money, and it's $13,000 here and it's $20,000 here, but we have to finally say, we have to finally say no. Thank you.
Bill?
If I understand what you're saying correctly is, if we have the people, we stand a good chance of people spending a lot less time in jail. If they're able to get their time, go in a timely manner. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yes.
So I guess to answer the question on the dollars, it wouldn't take very many days in jail at all to make that money back and then some. Not only, I mean, on top of all the other constitutional rights that people have to be defended. But to me, I would think that this would wash itself, or even we'd come out ahead by having fewer people in jail that we have to feed and take care of. And so to me, I think it's a wash, and I think that we do have an obligation to make the right choice here. So thank you, Judge.
Any other discussion?
I have one other question.
Yes, Harvey.
Can you validate for us that having this extra time would keep people out of jail? They would spend less time in jail than they currently are?
Well, I simply think they would, because they would have, the attorney would have more time to work the case, to talk to witnesses, to talk to the prosecutor, and to talk to the client, rather than having to get the case continued at once, twice, or three times.
So an arrest is made and the offending individual brought in and put into jail.
Yes.
And then that person stays there until the defender has time to work with them and bring their case up.
Unless they can make bond, yes, sir.
Sir?
Unless they can make bond.
Unless they can make bond, which is highly unusual in these kind of cases.
Well, it's less unusual in misdemeanor cases than it is in felony cases, but yes, a lot of them spend significant time in jail.
What do you mean by significant?
Well, it could be months. Depends. Some of the courts meet once a month, some every 2 weeks. So the case gets bumped 2 weeks or gets bumped a month.
So if I'm an indigent and come in and put in jail, I will be there until the attorney has time to work my case up and the judge has time to hear it. So that could be 2 or 3 months.
It could be, yes, sir.
Guys, that's worthy of consideration. I'm telling you something. The time in jail, Sheriff, I saw you back there. What's the daily cost for maintaining a prisoner?
We get 28.
Yeah. $64 a day.
We get 32. Covered.
Guys, I'm telling you, I'm still torn. But if this is a real deal, we'll save some money by trying to get them some more time to keep these people out of jail ahead of time. And, I don't like throwing any money away, but, I basically believe on what we're hearing tonight, that if it'll keep some of these people out of jail a while longer, that would be some money well spent. And I'm going to be hard to get along with when it comes to keep asking for money. But I think they just convinced me. I'm going to have to vote yes on this tonight.
Eva?
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone for their discussion. I wanted to say one thing. The constitutional issues, we do have a constitutional right to defend indigent folks. I think that obligation lies with the state, not with us. But I will say this. I know there was some discussion in the committee meetings about if people wouldn't get in trouble, they wouldn't be in the position to need a lawyer. And as a lawyer, I feel obligated to remind everyone that just because you're charged doesn't mean you're guilty, innocent until proven guilty. And sometimes the very people who need the lawyer the most are those who are indigent and innocent. And for that reason, I've made a decision to support this.
Rick?
There's one other factor to this that was pointed out in our committee meeting. We're not doing everything that we're required to by law by having an employee at 30 hours a week to do the public defender's job, as I understand it. We fall short. I don't know exactly what our ramifications would be, but the thing is, the law is stating that we provide these people with a certain level of service, and we're not meeting it. So armed with that and the situation that we will save some money in jail expense to offset this sum, will it be all of it? Maybe, maybe not. We're probably not going to know. But it's a good solution to the problem we have, and I'll support it. Thank you.
Do I have a motion? I'm sorry.
You've got a motion.
Do I have a motion and a second? Okay. If no other discussion, Carly, would you call the roll, please?
Lisa Ecke, John Furman,
Yes.
Ann Harbison,
Reluctantly, yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
No.
Tom Lundstrom,
No.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell,
Yes.
Joe Patterson, Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
It's 10-4 and 1, Judge.
This ordinance is passed. 6-4.
Okay, we move to 6.4. Steve, would you please read 6.4, please?
Thank you very much.
An ordinance creating an additional personnel position in the county library budget, reducing personal services line items in the county library budget by $12,393 and appropriating the amount of $22,035 from the county library fund to the county library budget for 2015. Article 1. Budget controls are hereby suspended in the personnel position of interlibrary loan administrative assistant, position 060004 is grade 13 is created in the county library budget for the county library fund for 2015. Article 2, the following personnel services line items in the county library budget are hereby reduced by a total sum of $12,293. Salaries part-time, $10,136. Social Security matching, $775. Non-contributory retirement, $1,482, for a total reduction of $12,293. Article 3, there is hereby appropriated the total amount of $22,035 from the county library fund to the following personal services line items in the county library budget for 2015. Salaries full-time position 060004, $18,020. Social Security matching, $1,379. Non-contributory retirement, $2,636. Health insurance matching, $3,699. Life insurance, $99, for a total appropriation of $22,035.
Thank you, Steve. This request by the Library Board Director, Glenda, for the full-time librarian administrative assistant is funded by its own revenue source. It comes from the millage for the library, and it will not affect our general funds or any other revenue source. So Butch made the motion in committee to forward to the full quorum court with a due pass, and seconded. It was approved unanimously, and I move to pass 6.4.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Carly, would you call the roll?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
John Furman,
Yes.
Ann Harbison,
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison, Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell, Joe Patterson,
Yes.
Butch Pond, Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
Yes.
Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Ordinance passed. Thank you very much, Rick. The next thing we have is county judge report. We have a couple of things going on. We have our first presentation is going to be Judge Zimmerman.
Good evening.
Tell us who you are.
I'm doing well. I just came from juvenile court. We had a late night. I appreciate all of your hard work. I'm a little nervous to come up against on some of those comments, because when you see this, you're going to fall out. But I'm going to have you all. I don't know if you received a copy, but we did some modifications. We had a meeting at juvenile court last month to show you all what the layout looks like in juvenile court. And one of the biggest things that we have going on right now over the past several years is the security and the size of our lobby. The packet that I'm handing out tells you a little bit about the types of cases that we hear in juvenile court. Not only do I hear cases involving kids that have been arrested for committing a crime, but we also have cases where children come into foster care. We have over 300 children in foster care in Washington and Madison counties. So we have about a 300 square foot lobby where the families are in court waiting for their case to be called. Their child is maybe in foster care. You have a foster parent in the lobby. And it's a very small powder keg situation. So when I have cases where parents are incarcerated, they're brought through the lobby in shackles, and then we have families and kids in the lobby. And so after we had a little meeting at the juvenile court complex to see our layout, I wanted everybody to kind of brainstorm about ways that we could make our situation there a little safer for the families that we serve. We have about 1,200 people that come through our front doors every month. And these are families, they're young children, they're teachers, they're principals, they're members of our community. And when people come through that lobby, oftentimes they're upset. Maybe their kids have been lost to foster care due to abuse or neglect. Maybe they're a victim on a crime. And so when we have witnesses come to court, children that are victims of these cases, we have an office that we've modified. It's about 10 by 12, and we have the kids waiting in that little area so they don't see the person who's abused them. So I brainstormed with my staff. I spoke to Sheriff Helder. He made some suggestions on my little, don't hold it against me, I'm not an architect, but I kind of sketched out a proposal to make our old courtroom into a new lobby to give us more space, with an extension out the back towards the animal shelter and a small extension out the front so we could have an actual metal detector with a conveyor belt so people are actually screened thoroughly before they come into court. Not only for the safety of the staff and the employees of Washington County, but most importantly, the families and the people that we serve. So that's a sketch, a rough sketch of a proposed addition to the back and front of Juvenile Court building. The building was built in 2000, and it would be an approximate 5,100 square foot addition when you count the back and the front. So I just wanted to bring that to the court's attention. I know that you have a lot on your plate. I know that resources are scarce. All the comments that were made regarding the request for the public defender full-time position, I think are very applicable to this. I know you have a small pie, a small amount of funds, but I would like to kind of start thinking about this because it impacts the 1,200 or so people who come through our front doors every month that are citizens of Washington County. And, you know, abused and neglected children they don't vote, so they don't really have a voice, and we try to make it as safe an atmosphere for them to come to court. And by law, in dependent neglect cases, children have the right to be present, because we're talking about decisions that are affecting their lives. In addition to that, we also have cases where juveniles come to court. You have one or two parents, you have grandparents, so it's unlike the adult system where you have the defendant adult coming and that's it. So we have families, and we want to have families. You know, it takes a village to raise a child, and we want the families to be involved. So I just wanted to put that out there as something to start thinking about. And in the drawing, the first page is in yellow is the actual addition that would be out towards the back. And it's about 68 feet by 78 feet if you include the holding cell. And the little holding area that you see on the first page to the left would be where the adult defendants or the adults that are coming over from jail or prison would be there, so they're not coming through the actual lobby through the public area. And then the second page, the yellow, is the small little addition out the front to give us space to put the actual metal detector in. And our JDC on the weekends is open to the public for families to come visit the juveniles that are in detention. So that little area is always open for the weekends. So that's kind of an overview of a possible solution to what we're dealing with. So thank you for letting me come speak. I'd entertain any questions.
Ann?
I've asked
I'm sorry,
Ann. Our attorney to look into our bond issue that's paid by fines and fees. and where we are on that, because to me, that's the only possible money that we have that we could use for this expansion, unless you come up with something else. So, I don't know where we are on that, but, we are looking into trying to find you some money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Harvey?
Do you have any idea what the cost for this will be?
I did a little internet surfing about commercial building costs, and it varied from $89 to $130 a square foot. I spoke with the sheriff about the little holding cell area for adults coming in the back, and that would need to be more reinforced concrete, so that would be a little more expensive. But generally speaking, $114 a square foot is the average I found for a courthouse expansion.
And so how many square feet are you talking about?
5,100.
5,100.
Without counting the little awning out the front.
Okay.
So it would be 5,100 square feet, average 114 per square feet.
Okay. Are there any?
Oh, I'm sorry, Harvey. I didn't mean
I'm sorry,
to.
go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just going to do a little calculation here.
Okay, while you do your math.
Rick?
Yes. The offices that you have presently in the existing building.
Yes.
I know you're really tight on space. I like seeing what you're doing with the child's playroom, because that little 8x8 area is just not big enough.
No.
I see 2 office/storage in the new expansion. That's
Right.
all. That's all you're going to end up adding. Is that going to cover you for long term?
I think so. I think that the big key is, if you'll look at the first page where it says consult, 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 there are 3 little offices there where attorneys can visit with their clients. And I think that's really important to give people an area where they can talk to their client, because these are volatile cases. Tonight I left and I had a registered sex offender. It was my last case of the day. He'd been out there in the lobby, and I had one of my extra deputies out there who do a fine job sitting with him, because he's a registered sex offender and their families out there. So having those 3 consulting rooms where we could put a person to wait to get them kind of out of the area, to me, is more important than having a bunch of offices that we don't need. I mean, right now we're tight, but that to me is more important. As far as moving my office and the trial court assistant's office, it's the same size. We just replicated it. And so just those 2 office storage areas were the only 2 little offices we added.
Okay. Well, my reason for asking that, the way you have in the lower left corner, you have
Yes.
the holding jut out that way. If you take your wall up where the JDC hallway is, where your yellow line starts, and you go left and down, you see the amount of room you get there?
True, but you have a huge generator right there that
Is that-
supplies the energy for detention if they're without power. So that's why we
Okay.
weren't able to build anything right there. And then to the right of that addition, you have the juvenile court electrical box and electrical. So that's why it kind of veers out at the very bottom. So I just tried to get it down to what would help with keeping families safe and keeping the public safe. And Justice Lloyd, she can tell you, she's been a witness as an educator, let me add that. And so she's been able to experience our lobby up close and personal. And when you have a teacher who's there to testify, or a principal or a family member, and they're going to say not too nice of things, and you're in that 300 square foot little lobby there, it's very uncomfortable. And so we've had people come and sit in the playroom if there's nobody in there. So that to me is the most pressing. And I think that the way that we operate with our offices, having those 2 office/storage areas would help if we needed to expand on that area.
Well, my reason for pointing that out is any time that you build a square, you get the
I know.
most bang for your buck. And
I
you've got a
know.
little jet out there, and I'm thinking, you might want, and it may be that you want to come on out farther down towards the bottom and do a little rework there, because your cost per square foot to gain a little extra space, because everything's been tight over there.
Right.
Until we filled in that final pie wedge, everything was stored in the hallway and that type of thing. And fortunately, the fire marshal didn't cry wolf on us. But
Right.
I would look at that. I mean, I see your problem. It is a dilemma. And, we just need to work on figuring out how we can make something like this happen for you.
And it's just a starting point. Like your comments are well taken, and we can play around and think about ways to make it more efficient even. But it's a starting point and an area to start thinking about.
That's good, because bringing that early allows us. I don't know how fast we can move on this, but if we can't get it done this year, if that's the way it works out, then we
Right.
can include it in our budgeting process.
Right.
You're bringing us good information to know that this is a future goal that we
Right.
need to
And
do,
it is a goal.
it is a true need. Thank you for coming
Thank
tonight.
you.
Robert, now, did you have your hand up?
No,
Oh, you're, okay. Lisa, you're next.
My question, his answer is $530,400.
Okay, thank you. Lisa?
Thank you, Judge. Have you considered doing this in phases? Like, what is the first phase? Can we do this?
I haven't
And can
even
we-
thought about that.
Okay.
But
Phase
that's
1,
a
phase
great
2,
point.
phase 3?
Right.
And maybe it's a little bit more manageable for the
to do it in
budget.
phases.
If you could prioritize saying, from what I'm seeing is the consult area is what you seem to emphasize, everybody having their own private.
Well, the major emphasis would be making more space for our lobby and enlarging our child waiting room, because
Okay.
right now it's 10 by 15
Right.
or whatever, and we have a lot of
It
kids
is.
packed in there. So that and the size of the lobby would be the two major things.
Okay. If we
And
could prioritize, say, this would be first, this second,
Right.
this is third, and if we could budget that way, would that be acceptable?
We'll
Would be
think-
something that we can work with?
Right, that we
Yeah.
could start with. That'd be
Okay.
great.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Madam Judge. Do you travel to Madison County for those cases, or do they come to
No,
Washington?
I travel twice a month, and I hold court in Madison County. So that's a separate bunch of cases. The numbers are Madison County strictly.
What sort of facility do you have over there? Is it in
right
their
now,
courthouse?
the roof on the main courthouse, is been leaking. So right now, we're holding court in the district court.
Okay. So Madison County doesn't contribute at all to the
No.
maintenance or upkeep on this facility?
No. Now, as far as the JDC side, the county of Madison County pays money when a Madison County juvenile is detained. But other than that, they do not
But the court,
contribute.
I'm
No.
talking about the court.
They
So
do not. They do not.
you travel over there twice a month
Twice a month.
and just make do with whatever
That's
situation
right.
greets you
I've
over
been known to
there.
have court in the community center with a card table, which was a little swankier than when I was in the lobby at the courts building when we had no air, and I was there next to the Coke machine, and the lady was buying snacks while we were having court, and I said, "Ma'am, you can't do that unless you buy enough for all of us," and then she quit. So we just kind of go with the flow. Okay, that was a little.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, so I'm sure it is.
I don't think Ron is here unless I'm missing him, but I would like to have an architect look at this. And I know that sometimes that's involved in appropriation, so that may not be something we can do tonight, but
Well, and I also spoke with Attorney Zaga. We have $42,000 in our fees for juvenile court fees that we have in a fund. And under the statute, it says that we can use that for juvenile services. And we talked about using that to hire an architect to come up with some drafts. I was just trying to start with something. And so we're going to research that to see if we could maybe hire an attorney out of that $42,000 that we have in a fund.
good, because that's what I'd like to see. I mean, I think you've done a lot of work already, but architects, in my experience,
Oh, yes.
do things that with space that none
Right.
of us have ever thought of. So,
And I think that's the great
yeah,
step.
I'd like
And
to
that
see
wouldn't
that.
come out of the budget, it would come out of that little pool of money.
Even better.
I know.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
anyone else? Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
The next thing we have on the agenda is the Washington County Spring Cleanup. Do you all have a copy of that? Or Carly, are you passing that out? Or
Yeah, we
everyone
have it.
has it? Okay, very
We have
good.
it somewhere here.
This has become a very, very successful thing. People really are using this. So just be aware, May the 13th through May the 15th, from 9 until 3. You've got your brochures in front of you. Encourage all your friends, all your family, everyone to use this, because I think this is a true asset to keeping our community clean. So encourage everyone to use it. I just wanted to bring that to your attention tonight. Sophie has asked me to. I don't have anyone from that department to speak, do I? Okay, thank you. The next thing I have on the agenda is Renee. I've got a report for you on the Valley View septic system. Are you wanting to talk a little bit on this?
I do. Judge, before we move on, Judge, may I ask you a question,
Sure.
please? Do we have any, what we call public service announcements that are going to be run through our news media promoting this, or signs or anything?
Let me ask
anybody
Karen. Karen, do you know of
that?
any? Sophia.
It all hooded up like this.
Sophia.
Okay. Because I know that there's a lot of public, what we used to call
Karen will check it
public
out
service
for you and then
announcements.
let you know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Karen.
They haven't passed. Okay, Renee.
Okay, you asked me to report on the situation at Valley View Golf Course. We were notified by ADEQ in an order that was issued April 1st that there was problems out there, and it was an emergency order of the director. On April 8th, the county judge, myself, Chief of Staff Dan Short, Larry Ulrich, members of DEQ and the Health Department, and Mayor Sonny Hudson met out there on site, and we noted some overflows of their lagoon system. Since that time, we have been in contact with DEQ, and it's an ongoing investigation. There's 4 different divisions within DEQ that are handling it. But we contemplate that DEQ will be filing a civil suit soon. And this is inside Prairie Grove city limits. The treatment area is. And the homes, a lot of the homes are in Farmington city limits, for those of you who
Now, Mr. Dennis, you were
weren't
there
aware.
too. Yeah, Mr.
Oh,
Dennis.
yes.
Yeah, he attended. Does anyone have questions for Renee? I know we can't answer a lot of stuff, but she can maybe give you a little bit of insight. Butch?
Oh, just, is that still overflowing, or have they pumped it down some?
It's not overflowing currently. In fact, it's decreased by 3 feet. We just don't know where those fluids have gone.
So there's 3 feet of freeboard.
Yes.
Okay. Golf course will be greener.
I bet you.
Thank you.
Anyone else got questions or comments? Sue?
Thank you, Madam Judge. Did that golf course stay open to the whoever uses it throughout this problem time?
Yes, ma'am. The health department, when we were out there, we met with Richard Murphy from the health department, and the overflow was going on between the 11 and 12 green. And so he said that if it continued, then they would close down those 2 holes of the golf course, but that never happened.
What would keep families' dogs from romping in this and tracking that home? I'm sort of astonished that this situation sort of just sat there.
Sue, may I?
Certainly.
Bust in. I actually had a dentist appointment the 7th, and it was the day after, the working day after Renee gave this to me, and I could go to the dentist in Lincoln, stopped on my way back to work. The answer to your question is that not only was the golf course open that particular morning, it was pretty nice and it was full. Yeah, and the day after that is when went out and they covered it with dirt and lime, which the health department, Mr. Murphy said, is the remediation for it. The answer to your second question is nothing, as far as I can tell. If you can stand the smell, it really is a visual experience. I think you need to have to. I'm not trying to be smart about it at all, but to fully appreciate the whole situation, I think you need to lay eyes on it. And that's all I'm going to say at this particular moment in time.
I value your opinion. Thank you.
Well, let me go on about this just a little bit, because I think there are what they call evaporation ponds, where the sewage is retained for a while.
Mm-hmm. It's an aeration cell.
Well, the man from the health department called an evaporation pond. Well,
okay.
What kind of fencing is around this pond with sewage in it?
It is just a wood board fence.
Like a solid wood?
No, ma'am.
Split
like
rail.
a rail.
Three tiered,
thought I
about
had
3
seen the
foot
pictures.
tall.
So there's nothing to keep small kids from wandering in. I mean, we assume small children are supervised, but sometimes they do wander.
No.
This is the fence?
That's the fence.
That's not a fence.
It's worse than what you're imagining, Sue.
It's worse than what I...
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. I live out there, and if you remember a few times back, I spoke about how that one of the big concerns of mine was the sewer and the growth in western Washington County. And this is a private district that we had no authority over, is the way I understand it.
Were we the agency
I'll stand
that
up for
first
our
permitted
judge.
it?
She asked some tough questions while she was out there and just kept getting put off. She sounded like a lawyer, as a matter of fact, the way she presented them. And, they ask a lot of tough questions, but at the same time, the authority is not ours yet until it spills over far enough. But there's a lot of rumors about where that evaporation goes to, and it's not evaporation. You don't lose 3 feet. And the pumps that pump it down have never been started before.
Oh, my goodness.
And the board of directors and the owner are family. And that was appointed by a previous judge.
Were we the original permitting agency that approved this setup, or who?
No, ma'am.
Did we never play a role in this?
We never played a role in approving this. It was
That's good
DEQ
news.
that approved this in April of 2000.
And it was in the city limits of Prairie Grove?
No, it was in an unincorporated area of the county at that time, but the county didn't have any ordinances or regulations concerning these type of systems in 2000.
So we didn't review it at all. It only had DEQ ordinance statutes at the time to go
Yes.
by, or
Yes,
rules
ma'am.
and regs.
Yes.
Are we sure that the public is that the residents out there are fully aware of where their dogs, cats,
That's not a fence.
bicycles may be going?
So
The
there's-
residents out there are fully aware that it is a private sewer system, and they pay each month for that private sewer system to.
Well, writing a check as part of the sewer system may not make you fully aware of what's out there.
They know.
Surely they do, right?
They know.
They know.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, from what Steve was saying, I think the aroma might be informational.
No, it's that experience is also to be firsthand. And I'm not being smart.
I'm going to decline. Thank you.
Richardson Road is the east-west road that is on the north side of the development. And on a day when the wind's blowing from the south, across 2 fairways and houses, you can smell it. We have a long, Sue, I want to be clear with, the county has a pretty long history with this development, or this particular improvement district. And in the interest of time, I don't want to go into all of it tonight. George sued them in 2007, I believe, asked for a receiver to be appointed. There was a settlement in that lawsuit that caused it to be dismissed. There are other aspects of this that go, and one other thing I wanted to say, there are actually two agencies from the state that get involved in all these things, DEQ and the Department of Health. And the Department of Health you have to construct these community sewer systems in accordance with a Department of Health approved and I read all this stuff reading about this particular issue. There are 3 or 4 approved basic designs. I understand that this is the only one of its type exactly like this in the state.
Oh, exactly like this, but
Now, there are other concepts like it.
Right,
One
same
with a
concept.
4-acre pond and Anyway.
Do you know if DEQ or the health department are contemplating any fines?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're being fined each day right now that they're in violation. And then when they file a civil complaint in circuit court, then there will be additional fines.
Will those fines be held against the homeowners out there, or?
No, it will be against the improvement district.
And that's the 3 people that are on this board? Are they personally responsible?
There's
It's 5 people.
5 people?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I guess that's enough discussion about something that the county's not responsible for. But still, I think it is a county concern, nevertheless, and thank you for bringing it to us.
Thank you.
Joe, I think you're next.
That sums up my question, and that at what point does this become something that we need to be concerned about or can act on more specifically?
I think at the point that it becomes a county issue is when we can prove that it's going directly into the Illinois River and going into unincorporated areas of the county, which is in turn affecting the water quality for the Illinois River.
And what parameters would we have to prove before we get to that point?
That's a Steve Zaga question.
Joel, I've actually wrapped my head around that a little bit. There's an unnamed tributary creek. The pond actually sits on a hill. There are downhills, basically, not the crest of a hill, but nearly. There's an unnamed tributary creek that flows into the Illinois less than a quarter mile away. I think there would have to be some pretty substantial to prove it in a sense that you'd have to go to court with proof. You probably need an expert to talk about the difference in, and this is going to sound nasty, fecal coliform and E. coli counts above and below that entrance point, and then the tributary creek above and below where the pond is. That would be the first thing I would try to do if I were trying to prove that case. There are other circumstantial things that I've heard that I really kind of prefer not to get into right now in terms of the details. I can just tell you that based on what I understand to have been the records of water use that come from the Washington Water Authority versus and people who work in wastewater can tell you with a pretty decent amount of precision, if you have X number of gallons going into a household, you should have X number of gallons of wastewater coming out. Multiply that by the known capacity of this pond, where did the rest of it go? It's an arithmetic issue, essentially.
Well, not that I don't enjoy a good discussion about fecal matter and sewage ponds, but just trying to figure out at what point do we come into play, and at what point does this go past just a conversation and to something that we need to action?
It would go into a point beyond a conversation if there were, if we had what I would call probable cause, a reasonable belief that this was going outside the city limits of Prairie Grove and into the unincorporated areas of the county. Right now, from what I know, we don't have that particular, I don't have that hook today.
Joe? I have him first.
I was just going to say, when they quit playing golf, that'll probably be time probably need to get serious about it.
You live out there, you're serious about it already.
Eva?
I live out there.
I was just curious what the resolution was of the 2007 lawsuit that.
The order dismissed it with prejudice. It didn't. There wasn't a settlement attachment to it. So, by the way, even if it was dismissed without, the statute's run by now. I wasn't able to glean from the file what the terms and conditions like. That was another hook that I thought about with Renee. Is there a contempt? Can I get in contempt? Can I get them for contempt? And no.
Or violation of a settlement agreement.
Right.
Was there?
No.
Oh.
Nothing that I saw.
Okay. Thanks.
Rick? Just to further answer your question, that lawsuit involved the requirement to file an audit each year. And so the county has repealed that requirement since that time. So.
Rick?
A question for Steve. Should we go ahead and take some water quality samples?
Well, okay, that's a question that I should have some input in probably, but not, it's beyond, a little bit beyond my pay grade in this. I'm not.
I understand.
Do you want to go through that process and start getting into, if you look at the health department report, the findings are pretty alarming in terms of, and it's in the ADEQ order. The findings are pretty alarming in terms of fecal coliform and E. coli counts. Yeah. I would say that's not a bad idea, but I'm having a hard time getting my mind around the formulation of the next step if we say, okay, we want to get into water testing. In other words, who do we hire? How do we do that? Do we go through all the things that we have to do when we request outside professional services in terms of requests for qualifications? I hadn't even put my mind around that particular question yet. But, personally, I don't think it's a bad idea. But I would say this to you. In terms of if the court decides to make that decision, right, return on investment on something like that, in terms of dollars or bucks that might come back, you're probably not going to see any of that come back to you. So there may be a cost-benefit analysis that y'all need to engage in on that kind of question.
Thank you.
Yes, Ann.
The Illinois Watershed, whatever that organization is the person that should be aware of all of this and let them take care of it because, we've got a lawsuit. And we need to let the state and some other organizations with water quality. I don't think this court needs to start testing water quality in the county. We have other organizations to do that, and I think we need to let them do it. Now, if they don't do it, then that may cause another issue. All right, thank you.
Yes, Butch.
I agree with Ann. The first place to start is with the Illinois River Watershed Organization. They're going to be the ones most interested in it, and on top of who to bring in to do water sampling, that sort of thing.
Sharon.
On page 2 of the report, didn't the ADEQ already take samples?
Yes, ma'am.
So
It's included in your packet.
exactly, and the numbers are all there and in red and all that kind of stuff.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
okay.
I don't know what our involvement is here. I just felt like this was a subject that each one of you needed to be made aware of. I think it's very, very important, and that's kind of why we brought it to you tonight. I know there's a lot of questions. I don't know how many answers, but I do thank each and every one of you for taking an interest and listening to this, because I can think of nothing that's more valuable to us than our water in this area. So I just wanted you to all hear, even though it's in the city of Prairie Grove, I still feel like that everyone needs to be aware of it. I didn't want everyone to sit back and think, well, none of us paid any attention and none of us did anything. So thank you all very much for being concerned. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The last Quorum Court meeting, I brought out the fact is on the video, which was a very, very difficult thing for me to bring out. Tonight, I have a statement that I would like to make. I want the safety of the people of Washington County is my number one priority. That is why I revealed the video and I took action on it when I thought it was certain that, and I knew it was certain that the media and my political opposition would do exactly what they're doing now. I knew I would face criticism. I knew I would face bad publicity and editorials in the newspaper. That criticism was less of a concern to me than fixing the problem. The allegations of cover-up is wrong, was wrong. There's never been any cover-up. I took action on the Stonewall Bridge to correct the problem. I did that on the advice of my engineer, Mr. Jam Beatty. I don't understand why it was wrong for me to follow his engineer's advice. Then when I follow his advice, I'm still wrong. The Harvey Dowell Bridge is still up, sitting right there for everyone who wants to look with x-rays, radar or x-rays, or to the naked eye. I have asked the prosecuting attorney to investigate promptly after I had confirmed the problem of Stonewall and Harvey Dowell. Ms. Madison, unsatisfied with the request, asked that the Attorney General to investigate. We asked Matt to suspend our request pending the AG's decision. Now, both the prosecutor and the AG have let us know that they are not going to do the investigation. I still want an answer, and I want to know, and I want an investigation. I'm going to get further into that, and I want some input from all of you. Unlike certain members of this court and the press, I don't have the luxury of jumping into conclusions. I've been sued twice in the last 4 months, once for firing someone and then once for not firing someone. I need the results of the investigation to base my decision on, so I propose a joint investigation between my office and a member of the Quorum Court of your choosing. This investigation would happen regardless of who you choose. In other words, if we've got some outside entity that's willing to come in and do an investigation, which I've been working with the Highway Department with the help of Senator Uvalde Lindsay. I've been working with the legislative audit. I'm hoping that they will give me some help. But even if they do give me help, I still want an investigation coming from this body and someone in the county judge's office. I would assign Mr. Short to be my office investigator. As a retired police officer with 28 years' experience in investigation, everything from traffic tickets to mass murder, Dan has the training and the experience necessary to get to the bottom of this issue. Eva has been one of my biggest vocal critics on this issue. I would like to invite Eva, if she has the time, to represent the court. If she could possibly ask me to tell me tonight, I would like an answer from her. If she doesn't feel like she can do that, then I would like this court to choose someone from this court that could participate in this investigation. I would like the court's representative and Dan to work together literally. I want them present together at every interview. I want each of them reading every document and examining every piece of evidence. I would request their finished report to be on my desk no later than 2 weeks from tomorrow. If the court wants a special meeting to discuss the report, I will call a special meeting to inform each and every one of you and the public what's going on. If this is not satisfactory to the court, I propose that we hire a private investigator. The court would have to appropriate the money, and I would, by law, be responsible to engage the contractor. I would welcome the court's input on this decision. If that is not satisfactory to the court, I am open to suggestions, whatever you guys feel like that could be done. The safety of the citizens of Washington County is my #1 priority. As a county judge, that safety is my responsibility, which is why I acted. I also have a responsibility to find the facts and how and why this happened, and to treat everyone involved with dignity, respect, and fair hearing. I need help. I'm asking for your help. I'm hoping that we can get the assistance from the state. I'm still waiting on that answer, but anything we can do to get this investigation going, I'd like to get it started. I'd like for it to be around. I don't feel like that the county has anything to hide. There is no cover-ups. I just want this safety taken care of, and I'm willing to help and do whatever is necessary. Thank you all very much. Now, if you want to discuss, we want to have a discussion on how you want to handle the investigation, who wants to handle your part. I'm open for suggestions. Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think it's a step in the right direction. This will help to restore some public confidence, which is very important at this point in time. I've got all the confidence in the world in Mr. Short's ability to investigate. He's been a licensed private investigator as well as a state highway patrolman. I myself was a licensed private investigator for a few years. But anyway, I know a little bit about his background in that area. He and I have discussed it. So I feel very comfortable with that. And whoever the court chooses, I would feel comfortable with that. And I understand that the State Highway Department is going to look at all the bridges. Is that correct?
They have not give us an answer
Haven't
as
answered
of
that
yet,
yet.
but we are working, and Senator Lindsay is certainly trying to help us with this.
Well, I'm a little concerned. You know, I appreciate that, and I look forward to them doing that. I'm just a little concerned about how good of inspections those will be. As when I was mayor of Elm Springs, the state would come out and inspect our bridges, and it amounted to walking over them and seeing if there was any cracks and crevices and failing piers or that type of thing. So, you know, and my concern with this issue has been how many years back does this problem go? And I know you're looking at the same thing by
Yes.
having them look at all these different bridges. So we're definitely on the same page there. I just wonder if they're going to do any X-raying or any of that.
If
You
they-
won't know until you talk to
Well,
them. I'm
no,
sure.
and if they have the equipment, they will do it for us at no charge.
Yeah, right.
But if they don't have the equipment, we may have to have someone to come in and do it. I feel like, and I don't want to make a comment because that's not a fact, but I feel like that Harvey Dow is a good bridge, but I did not want to take the chance after I talked to the engineer if there was any question, so I dropped the limit to 3 ton.
Have you talked to Judge Hutton at all about his experience, the 10 years he was here
No, sir.
on bridges? Because I'm sure there were some bridges built during,
Well,
Steve was here a lot of those
It was
years.
some of the people were still with Judge Hutton, and some of them were also with Judge Johnson.
Yeah, right. So
So it's a lot of the same people. But I'm very concerned and I'm very interested, and I do want to get something done.
anyway, I want you to know I appreciate the direction you're taking on this, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Sue?
Thank you, Madam Judge. I just want to say that I think it is completely inappropriate for a member of this committee, of this quorum court, to be investigating this issue. For one thing, this is a part-time position, and we all have other obligations. And to suddenly now be faced with a 2-week period of launching a major investigation is totally unrealistic. And I think we shouldn't be expected to do that. I think Mr. Short has a conflict of interest in that he works for you. I think we need to find some independent person with some expertise to look at this issue. I myself wrote you a letter back in December after I got Mr. Braswell's letter saying, you know, here's this letter that we all received, JP-elect as well as incumbent JPs. What has happened to investigate this issue? And the answer I got was dismissive. You wouldn't reply because of a lawsuit that's about retaliation. So I don't know why it took this long and a video to suddenly have the need for an investigation when we had the opportunity to start one some time ago. But to suddenly say that we've got 2 weeks now to complete an investigation is not realistic. And I'm certainly not going to volunteer to do it because I don't think I have the time or the expertise, and I think it would be inappropriate.
Butch?
Thank you.
I appreciate the idea of what you're putting together here, and I know some of us are, you know, we're kind of short for time, and it's a part-time job. But if and your suggestion of Eva would be very good, but if she doesn't have time, I would be asking if Tom Lundstrom has time to take part in that investigation with Dan. He has the experience.
Well, I'm open for suggestions. That's what I'm wanting to open the floor. Sharon?
And that's my question. If Eva doesn't want to do it, wouldn't it behoove us to point somebody or ask someone that has some kind of experience? I mean, I'm an educator, so bridges are not in my realm of thinking, but somebody that has some experience.
Yes, please.
If I may put one of our justice on the spot, and I asked if Bill Usry can speak on this, because you seem to be the one that has an understanding and a background, and that is what you do as far as when you explained to me what was going on at the Stonewall Bridge. And you have that knowledge, and you can look at it from a professional point of view. If you'd like to speak on that, I think you're very qualified for it, in my opinion.
Bill?
the time commitment might be an issue. But if that's the pleasure of the court, I would do what needs to be done.
Thank you. Butch?
Bill would be excellent, but we're talking about something he does for a living. If Bill were the one to come in and join Dan in that investigation, I would feel more comfortable about doing an ordinance to contract for Bill's labor. Thank you.
He's shaking his head no over there, Butch. Sharon?
It struck me, 2 weeks, is that going to be long enough for an investigation? That's kind of a short
right,
window.
and if they need the people that do it, if they feel like they need
Yeah,
more,
okay.
that's just a suggestion.
Yeah, okay, 2 weeks seemed short.
Harvey?
I guess, guys, we got a lot of questions to ask here. Number one, will the real person on here that we need to help with be requiring knowledge about concrete and rebar, or will their expertise be more involved in asking appropriate questions to get to the truth in the situation? You know, it's my impression that the investigation involves digging out the details. And that's a matter of taking testimony from people that are involved in the process. Not out there running fancy equipment to x-ray piers or anything of the kind, but to find out what, when, and where. And, you know, guys, as far as I'm concerned, Tom has background in that area, and Eva doesn't want to do it, doesn't have the time to do it. I think he has expertise and background that would be very helpful in that situation. So from my standpoint, I'd say, Eva, are you interested in doing this?
I'm at a loss for words, actually. I know y'all are shocked. I'm sort of, I think I just have a lot of unknowns at this point. I was checking my work calendar to see if I could possibly abandon my law practice for a couple weeks. That's possible. My associate is about to have a baby, so I was thinking about that too. I think I need a better feel for the scope of the investigation that we would be tasked with doing, because I'm not a bridge expert, and I am not going to be able to test the safety of a bridge. My assumption would be that we would leave that to AHTD, and this would be more of an investigation. Well, there's several facets to it. If legislative audit conducts the accounting investigation, that would be separate. If AHTD inspects the safety of the bridges, that would be separate. The remainder would be the civil aspect of it that we had hoped the Attorney General or the prosecuting attorney would be able to do, which is sort of the inner workings of the county. I think I could handle that. I can't handle engineering plans. I talked to a lot of people today after the AG's letter came, and I also spoke with the prosecuting attorney. I knew that he was leaning towards saying no.
Yeah, he told us.
I spoke with him about the potential for a grand jury because someone had suggested that to me. The challenge is that without being asked to investigate a crime, there's not really a role for the prosecuting attorney or a grand jury to play. You have to initiate that with there's some allegation of criminal activity, which there's not. It's a civil investigation. And the question then that everybody asked me was, well, if they won't do it, who's going to do it? Short of hiring an outside investigator, which I think would have to be, I mean, sometimes in my work, if I have a client that needs an investigation done, we hire another lawyer to do it. They're not really wearing their lawyer hat in the role. They're just sort of have the tenacity to do an investigation. I don't know how much that could cost to do. So if I'm correct on the scope of the investigation, I think I understand what's being asked. I would be willing to do that. I think my calendar can accommodate it. I would want to have the support of the court to be your designee to do that. I'm not sure I could give you an answer tonight, Judge. I think I might like until the morning.
That's fine.
Just to at least be able to sort of sort through.
Well, do me a favor. If you want to think till morning, then let's find someone that would be your replacement in case you could not do it.
Okay.
Joel? Okay, Judge, I got one more question.
Let me get Joel first.
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
First of all, I'm grateful that you're bringing this out because I know that for several months now this has been festering just because of the lack of answers.
1 month.
Well, according to Mr. Braswell, bringing these considerations back in 2013, that the issues have been on the table for quite some time. So in light of that, I think one of the problems is letting this roll has certainly given it legs and caused a lot of momentum that's not helpful for anyone. So I think what we're doing is very, very helpful, and I appreciate you doing that. One of the concerns that's come up multiple times, had a call this morning from a very angry constituent, never met him before, but we spent 45 minutes on the phone. One of the concerns is that if we're going to do an investigation, that it be done by a group or an entity or a person or whatever that then is worthwhile to present to the public and has their trust. And the concern has been from several people that if we investigate this internally, we may be very, very thorough, but it may not have traction with the public. It may just lend to a sense of mistrust that's certainly there, whether it's appropriate or not. There's several things along the way that has caused several people to really raise an eyebrow. Whether or not there's any fire there, they sense smoke. So my recommendation or my thoughts, and I'm echoing the constituents that I've talked to several, and that's not just conjecture, there have been several who've called and emailed, is that we need to make sure that this is done outside of the parties that are involved, from administration, the road department, et cetera, to let the investigation be done by someone that when we bring that to the public and present the findings of that it truly brings rest and resolution to it rather than just fostering more distrust because it was internally driven. Thank you.
Let me ask you, do you know
Yes, ma'am.
someone that does that?
No, but I think that would be a question. If we've taken this long to get here, I think that's a question that would be worth our time to take due process to find the appropriate. I have asked multiple judges, multiple legal entities. I have tried to do the research, and the problem is there doesn't seem to be an obvious, I hope there is one, but there doesn't seem to be an obvious mechanism of oversight or investigation into something like this. If it has criminality to it, there are obviously certain entities that would automatically come into play. If there's financial misuse or abuse, there's certain entities that would automatically come into play with this type of civil institution here. There's not a clear-cut oversight or person or entity that would be easily identified as being the people to go to that would bring the ability to investigate, the tenacity to ask the right questions, and also bring the lack of bias or preformed conclusions or any kind of perception to the public that they're not getting a true, fair, and unbiased opinion. Okay. So I don't mind to continue trying to find who that would be and have several questions out there to try to gather that back.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Harvey.
Judge, I think it's really important that we consider that the people who will be testifying of this would be subject to perjury charges if there's any misrepresentation involved. And if we don't have consequences attached to any untruth that might be involved in testimony, then as far as I'm concerned, there's going to be very limited efficiency in doing the questioning.
Let me recognize, okay, let me recognize Tom. And then Steve.
I have a lot of sympathy with what Joel said, because perceptions that we create in people's minds, either, knowingly or unknowingly, can be very bad for us. One question I wanted to ask the judge is, maybe we should consider the sheriff's department. We have some excellent investigators over there. I've known some of them and known some of the cases they've investigated. I mean, it's not a criminal case, but
shaking his head.
I knew that answer already.
That's what you get paid for, Helder. To investigate.
Tom had already asked him.
Okay. Already been asking. He's already backed out, you chicken.
Turn it down.
Anyway, talking about Brother Short over there, I do have a lot of confidence in his ability to investigate. So I'm just wondering if we need a motion to decide if this is what the court wants to do. In other words, Eva.
Well, Steve wants to be recognized, so let's let him speak now. Go ahead, Steve.
There are a couple things I think I need to speak to that have been brought up that do have legal components. Harvey, in the absence of an official court proceeding, perjury won't attach. It's just not going to happen. You can't put people under oath unless there's a prosecutor subpoena, which is akin to a grand jury, or they're upstairs in the circuit court. There's not a, you could, I suppose, ask them to make an affidavit. If they are employees of the county, perhaps you could ask them to swear to their testimony in an affidavit. But that would only be, if that turns out to be false in any way, that's only false swearing, which is a lesser crime, lesser criminal penalty than perjury. Perjury is a false official statement under oath in an official proceeding. That's the definition. So that wouldn't happen. Tom, before the sheriff told you, I had actually floated that trial balloon about 10 days ago when I was down at the sheriff's office, when I kind of thought that we weren't getting anywhere with the attorney general, and somebody, not the elected sheriff, said, I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, some of these things, Mr. Zaga, I think could change, like the audit, for example. If there's some problems with the cash.
Yes.
Like if money was saved by not putting rebar where it's supposed to be and spent somewhere else.
Which
if that showed up in the audit, then we could have criminal.
That's right, and that's another suggestion I would have for the scope, not about who did it, but the scope.
Right, yeah.
If somebody gets to a point where they said, yeah, so-and-so told me instead of buying this load of concrete, they lined their pockets with the money, that's at the point in time you stop the investigation. You suspend the investigation and you say, we do need a criminal investigation now,
right, yeah,
because this has suddenly turned into actual, a potential actual crime, which is why, frankly, I think the AG said no, the prosecutor said no, and the sheriff has said no. And that gets to my last point. Whatever y'all decide to do, and whenever you decide to do it, you just need to realize that this is a very unusual situation. Most bigger government entities, the Department of Defense, the Army units, the Secretary of State, they all have IGs for this exact kind of stuff. Well, in my now 15-year association with Washington County, this is the first exact situation of this kind. So I think it needs to be very ad hoc, very flexible from y'all. I would recommend that simply because it's not something you deal with on an everyday basis. And Joel, you make great points about that, but that's for y'all to decide, I think, as a matter of policy, which way you want it to go.
Let me just finish just a second, Judge, before you pass it on. My question basically was, I think you've already decided what you want to do. Dan works for you. Eva's a member of the court. Do we need to make a motion or something to give her the authority to work with Dan in that investigative role? And
if y'all are not comfortable with that arrangement, you tell us what you are comfortable with.
Well, I'm not uncomfortable with it. I'm just wondering what,
Yes,
yeah,
I think that's
what we need to do to make it official.
Yes.
So I would make a motion that the Quorum Court pick somebody, and if he was willing to volunteer as the judge asked her to, that'd be fine, but we need to authorize them to join Dan Short in an investigation of this bridge problem.
I've got Lisa, Ann, and Butch. Okay, I'm sorry.
You got a second there?
This was over here.
So we got
make a second?
Yes, sir.
On the list.
Okay. Okay. Now, we've got a motion and a second to Dan Short and Eva, if she so desires to do this. Is this what I'm understanding?
And if not, then another one.
That's correct.
If not, another one. Okay. Do we need to go ahead and make comments, Lisa?
My comment is this. We all represent our district. We were all elected to that position because we have our constituents' confidence to make the right decisions on their behalf. I feel comfortable if we were to have Tom, Eva, Bill, or whoever, a group representing us, which gives you a more balanced picture of the county's representation, so that way nobody can come back and saying, well, this was bias. It's because it was done internally. If we were to have 3 or 4 as a group, to investigator, a person who knows how to ask questions, and a professional, why can't we do it that way, representing all the people, instead of just one person?
Let Steve answer that for you.
It's a Freedom of Information Act issue. Lisa, if you have more than one of you together, then Dan.
Then Dan, you're going to be all over
and
the place.
And these cameras will be with the other Dan.
That is my freshman mistake that I hold. FOI.
Rick's hand up.
Well, I've got more, though. Hang on. I've got Ann next.
Do you feel the love, Dan? Do you feel it? Okay.
I think with Dan, Eva, or Tom, or Bill, and I would like to amend that motion if Eva decides she doesn't want to do it, that Tom be our next person and that Bill be our next person. I don't think that this will cause any internal, I don't think the public's going to take this as that we are investigating ourselves, because the quorum court is separate from the judge's office. And I think, some hard questions have been asked in the past, and with Eva or Tom or Bill and Dan, we just need to get to the bottom of what happened. Why did they do what they did? And I think that's what we want to know. And I think if we hire someone outside, we're spending money that we can do inside and save that money. I think we can come up with the same results. Thank you.
Okay, Butch?
I was not wanting Tom to make the motion because I did want him on there as being the JP if Eva sees that she doesn't have time to step in and do this. Also, I'd like to say, if they were willing, I wouldn't mind having Steve Whitmill join them and be a threesome. I know he's a very good investigator. If the sheriff could do without him for a little while.
Unfortunately, that falls back on the legal issue that Steve brought up earlier, law enforcement and criminal aspects. So I am more investigating.
Okay, thank you.
Rick?
Well, I propose a little different. I know the Freedom of Information Act prevents us from having more than 2 JPs together at a time. I suggest that we form a committee of 3. It'd be a legal committee of that. That committee of 3 would do the investigation. They would be paid for, committee work as they do. Dan can come to all the meetings, and we have a good representation, and it could be wrapped up in a reasonable amount of time. It wouldn't be every day, and it might be difficult for all of them to make it each meeting. But if we have 3 and 2 can make it, you have a quorum, if I understand that.
Go ahead.
He's making an alternate motion, but
or
not an alternate motion, but y'all have to consider the question that's before you now.
I agree that, but I'm just pointing out a possibility of doing it a little different way.
Okay, but I've got 2 or 3. I want to cover all discussions. I want to give everyone a John.
Thank you.
Well, I think if Eva could find the time to do it, that she would be good on that one aspect of the interviewing and stuff. I mean, that's what she does for a living. So, as opposed to the knowledge on the bridges, I would support this. Based on what you all have discussed, if that's what it comes down to. I guess I'm a little concerned if we were to take this outside of this group and we were to fund it. I mean, people can still say, well, the county funded it, so it's a sham. It's a sham, too. I mean, I think there's no way we can satisfy everyone. And I like the idea. I think that there's been some good comments about the fact that we're all independent. And there's no question in my mind that Eva is an independent thinker. So I'm not worried about the investigation on that level, and
That's a compliment.
Tom as well. And then the other thing is, just for discussion, not that we would have to do this, but I think that we should have some type of ordinance where it's funded, not that we have to spend any money, but just in case as we go along in an investigation that sounds like we want to make it short term, in order to hire some professionals alongside Dan and Eva. An example of that, I made some calls, and there are forensic bridge investigators that can, that for insurance purposes or whatever, will give you a report about what happened and why it's wrong. And the reason I think this might be important is in order to ask a question and then to find out if someone did or didn't do something appropriate. I think we first have to kind of understand how the bridge was made or what was wrong with it, so that we can ask that question to the people that we're trying to find out where things went wrong. And so in lieu of that, I mean, we would need some money. So anyway, those are just some of my general comments. Thank you.
Eva.
Sorry, a lot on my mind. My question was, people had asked about putting people under oath and how to get people to be sure they were telling the truth. Lawyers get witnesses to sign sworn statements all the time. Of course, the ramifications of falsifying that statement comes when it's submitted to a court. We could ask witnesses to sign sworn statements and simply have them notarized, I guess, but what's the consequence if there's something false? I mean, because we don't have subpoena power. I know the legislature can subpoena witnesses and put them under oath. I don't think we have anything close to that power. We could ask people to sign sworn statements. I'm just not sure what the consequence of that is.
I guess I'm calling an affidavit what you're calling a sworn statement, and that is
affidavit, right.
The consequence of making a false affidavit is false swearing. It's a misdemeanor. The flip side of that is I think most of the people you would interview would be county judges' employees. And while you wouldn't have subpoena power, I anticipate, Judge, I'm speaking for you now, but that she would make it a condition of employment to talk to you. Now, outside entities, Jim Beatty, for example, I would anticipate would be somebody you'd want to talk to in this investigation.
And Mr. Reed, I think, retired, right? Is he already retired?
Yes.
Okay.
And you wouldn't have any compulsory power over him.
Okay.
But Mr. Beatty, as a county contractor, I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for him now, I'm pretty sure he'd talk to you.
I know he would.
But you have the potential for outside the county. But I know the county judge's employees would, and they all, they all work for Maryland. Judge Edwards, she would tell them to be there as a condition of employment. Am I?
You're totally right.
Okay.
Okay, Tom.
Well, I just wanted to speak
I've got you.
to Rick's suggestion. I'm really uncomfortable with having a committee and bring people before a committee, because I've not found that to be a very effective way to investigate people. I think if you have Mr. Short and someone else in a room alone with a person, I've got a feeling that he knows how to ask the questions so that, it produces an answer. And oftentimes one person will talk about another person and so forth under those kind of circumstances where they won't otherwise. And I think that's the direction this investigation is going to have to go, is with individuals in the road department, and see, what they're willing to tell, what they're not willing to tell. But you almost always find somebody that's willing to give up a little something. And maybe we can get some facts as to why this decision was made and who instigated it, et cetera, et cetera. And I think those are the facts we need. And I'm really personally more comfortable with just two people doing it. Thank you, Judge.
Joe.
Thank you, Judge. I have about 3 questions. How many bridges are we talking about going back 20 years?
Well, no, if you're going back to 1995, Sean provided a list, and I think there was 34 or 35 bridges on that. The only bridges that I've been involved in is the last 2. And all those other bridges were built up.
Something else I would like to think about.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Something I would like to think about.
Sure.
We know we're going to investigate the one and the Harvey Dow.
Yes.
If we start with the investigation of the newest ones going towards the oldest ones, if you're not finding anything after you do several, then we're just gonna continue, I mean, depending on what it costs, or, because once you get out there to a point, 95, that's 20 years ago. So the bridge length is gonna have something to do with what.
Well, if they're
the
over
weight limit
20
is.
foot, the State Highway Department
Yeah.
gives us a rating on them every 2 years.
My point is, if you get back after these two and you start checking them, and there's none in the next 5,
Right.
maybe we ought to start taking every 3rd bridge or every 5th bridge or something. And if we find one, then we start. But I don't think we're gonna have a problem. I mean, I really don't. I don't think it's gonna go back too far.
I think most of your bridges that you're going to find that 1995, the State Highway Department has already come in, wear and tear on different things, whatever, but they've already put a weight limit on those bridges. So, they've already got tonnage on those.
This one going towards Round Mountain out here, when you go out, Judge Hunton built that one, I believe, and I can't remember.
Wyman.
The Wyman Bridge. To me, that would be the first one I'd check after I checked the first two. That's
Sure.
a big bridge. It's one that's under, probably somebody else worked for the road department at that time. It had something to do with it, maybe. If you
A lot
don't
of
find
those-
nothing, we'll then start finding those larger bridges. And if you don't find any, pretty soon, we just need to quit.
Yeah.
And say, in our opinion, we're good.
Joel?
J.P. Furman made a great point a while ago. I just wanted to recognize and then clarify a little bit. Talking about if we hire someone, does that then look like then that's just an extension of us? But I think there's a distinction between the Quorum Court, which as far as I know, we have no involvement in any of the implementation of this, but perhaps the responsibility to help bring this to light. And that if we as a court needed to spend, and we were already spent several $1,000s to repair and to the loss of use and the destruction, et cetera. So we're already in this for several $1,000s already. But if we decide to appropriate money to have someone who is the appropriate entity to investigate this, that would be this body doing it, not the folks that were being investigated from administrative, road department, right on down the list, whoever. So I think there might be a distinction there that the public would be much more accepting of something that was done by this Quorum Court as opposed to something done from the road administration or any administration affecting that. So hopefully that helps clarify a little bit. Thank you, Judge.
Bill?
I think we're on the right track here, and even though I may know something a little bit about the construction, I think that the bigger issue here, I think construction is a very, very small piece of this. I think that's a real small piece, because I think the real reason for the investigation is to find out where we ran off the tracks and repair that. And this is just almost a consequence of some decisions that people made. I think that's the bigger issue, and we all have different talents and abilities, and I'm grateful for that. And so I think we're on the right track here. Thank you.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate your comments. I feel like that we've brought some stuff, and I've got input from each of you. Now, we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. Do we have any more discussion?
I didn't hear a second.
Yeah, we had
Second to
a
the amendment?
And what?
Well, I had added 2 other people to the motion, Tom and Bill, to that motion.
For carryover, in case
For the
one-
carryover if Eva decides not to do it. And I think that the first choice, I think, was Tom, and the next choice was Bill. So.
I didn't hear, that's what I was saying. I didn't think there was a second to that motion.
Well,
To the amendment or to the
I-
motion?
No, the main motion.
Backups to this,
Yeah.
to my motion.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a second to Tom's motion. Mr. Dennis made it. But I didn't hear a second to Ann's amendment. Okay.
Okay,
I
so-
will accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. So now the main motion is to have the investigation conducted by Mr. Short from the county judge's office, and then one of the following 3 in order: Ms. Madison, Mr. Lundstrom, Ms. Usry. Am I, Tom? I'll make sure
That's the way I'm understanding.
I restated your motion correctly.
Do I have a point of order just so I understand what happened? Do we not have to vote on her amendment, or because he accepted
No,
as a friendly?
he's accepting as a friendly
Friendly
amendment, and
amendment.
so
So
you
it's
don't have to
automatically
do it.
amended?
It does not have to be. The amendment.
Second.
Okay.
So you're now, the question before you, as I understand it, is the main motion as friendly, with a friendly amendment.
I'm going to, Mr. Short has raised his hand. I'm just going to see, maybe he's not going to do it.
Thank you, Judge, and yes, I work at your pleasure, so I'll do what you asked me to do. I'd like to say something, respond to something that Ms. Eva Madison said earlier. She spoke to the scope of the investigation, and she was point on when she said that. If we step off into this agreement to investigate this, I would like to see the court give us a scope as far as what they want the investigative team, whether it be 2 people or 3 people or whatever, what they want us to determine. In criminal investigation, you typically know what the scope of an investigation is. You have a homicide, you have a armed robbery, you want to determine who did it, how they did it, why they did it, and provide the evidence to convict those people. In this type of situation, personally, I think most of the folks want to know why the Washington County Road Department built an inferior bridge, why they took steps that were not sanctioned in normal construction processes. I can envision an investigation that would be conducted simultaneously in 3 different directions. Leg audit doing a fraud, waste, and abuse through the paperwork and the crunching of the numbers. The Highway Department taking a look at the bridges themselves. And then the investigative team, whether it be myself and Ms. Madison or Tom or Bill, interviewing the people who had hands-on to create the situation in the first place. And during this investigation, my goal would be who, what, when, where, why, how, and why. Why being the most important in most investigations. 2 weeks, I think, for the 2-person investigative team would be sufficient to sit down with the people who I think we've already identified that worked on the 2 bridges during 2013 and 2014. I think if we had the undivided attention of those people and could schedule them in a 2-week period, we could have the answers that we needed. But I would like to see the scope to make sure that this body is in agreement as far as what they want the investigative team to learn. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dan. Steve?
Mr. Short made me think about something, and
Hey, Dan, turn that off, would you? Yeah. Thank you.
One of the people that you'd have to get permission to interview, even though he still works the road department, is Mr. Braswell, and I say permission from his attorney because it would be we couldn't force him, given his current status, I don't think, to be a participant in this investigation. I just want to make that clear. And if y'all accept Dan's suggestion, then I think that the appropriate forum for that is a resolution. And I don't have that ready tonight. So, Judge, y'all make a decision about whether you're going to come back and maybe have a 1-item agenda special meeting for this. But I can get a resolution together outlining the scope of the investigation, and have y'all debate, discuss, vote on it. Assuming you pass it, go home. Assuming that Tom's motion that he just made actually passes tonight. So that's my suggestion to you in terms of defining the 4 corners of the investigation, is do it in the form of a resolution.
Are all of you comfortable to have a resolution drawn up and bring you back in just for 1 item? Are you comfortable with that? Can I just have a yay or nay? All in favor to do a 1 resolution meeting, say aye.
Judge,
aye. I'm sorry.
You probably need to vote on Tom's motion first.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, call the roll, if you will, Carly.
Lisa Ecke? John Furman,
Yes.
Ann Harbison,
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
I'm going to abstain for now.
Sue Madison,
No.
Joel Maxwell,
No.
Joe Patterson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
No.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
11, 3, and 1, Judge.
So it passed.
Yes.
So this passed, so now, let's go back and talk about the resolution. So you've all say that you would be willing to come back and have a one-item meeting. I hate to do this, but I feel like we need to do this just to make sure that we've got all the bases covered.
With no pay?
No, you can, you know, the,
Should we piggyback it on the?
Yeah, I don't think we
next
should be
Monday night?
paid. I think we should just come back in.
when is the next meeting?
I was going to say it's week after next on Monday night.
Ooh,
Is that too
I don't
fast?
want to wait. I want this
No.
investigation
It's
on
actually 2 more
road.
weeks. May 4th is our next meeting.
Ann?
It's too late to have it tomorrow night, correct?
Yes.
It's too late.
Yeah, you got to have it.
Can we have one on Saturday? Or is,
No.
I make a motion. No.
Can you get a quorum here?
well, I'll make a motion we meet Monday then,
Monday.
Mondays, but that's fine.
at 5:30.
Okay.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay. Thank you, guys, for being
5:30.
patient. 5:30, yes, ma'am. Okay, the next thing on our agenda, committee reports. County Services.
We
No, wait a minute. County Services, that's Eva.
We did not meet, Judge. I want to interject that since I'm the representative to the Association of Quorum Courts, sort of a committee report. Adding to my list of things to do in the next couple weeks, we have our annual meeting Saturday morning in Little Rock. I'll be traveling, I think at my own expense, if I have this all figured out correctly. But anyway, I joke. I encourage all of you, if you have questions that you want me to take to this meeting with our audience, with the Association of Counties, to please let me know.
And gave you your gas money too.
Well, that's what I was joking about. I'm not sure the ordinance allows me to be paid, but
No,
Yeah, for that you do.
I disagree, but I think you can be paid
Yeah,
for
I
your
think you can
Okay.
too.
reimbursed, but it's a reimbursement for your turned-in mileage.
Okay.
Give Karen a mileage slip, I'm sure you'll get
There
paid.
you go.
okay. Well, I say that because I want you all to know that the meeting is happening, and I'm your representative. So if you have input that you would like me to take with me, or questions you want me to ask, please let me know. I will be there all day. If I get elected to the board again, they'll pay my mileage.
Is it on
So-
Saturday?
Yes, it is on Saturday.
It's spring day.
Public Works, Mr. Bowman.
If I may, Eva, thank you for assuming that responsibility and representing us. Thank you.
Harvey.
Okay, Public Works. On March 30th, we had a meeting, and we had Ron Wood come and give us an update on buildings and maintenance and so forth. Everything seems to be in great shape. I had traveled with Ron and spent a day out here looking at facilities, and I was very impressed. I also spent a day with Sean out here looking at the road situation, and he gave us a report about what's going on there. Everything seems to be on course there, of course, except the bridge situation. We did go and look at both bridges, and so I thought that was very informative, and I'm looking forward to this investigation. Beyond that, we asked Mr. Braswell to come to the meeting and give us a statement about his observations. He did so, followed by Jeff Williams that came and talked to us about his involvement in the video. We had substantial conversation within the committee about that process later, realizing that we're not making decisions about this, and it's not our responsibility to make decisions in the road department, but we need to be informed for future reference. With that, then the judge came and made a statement. She read a statement, and then nobody else from the roads department came and testified at that time. Based on that, we adjourned. I don't think there's anything else. I believe we did have one statement from the public, but after that, we were adjourned. Thank you, ma'am.
Butch?
We had a request from the public defender to change a part-time attorney to full-time, which we passed that this evening. Then we had the request from the county library board for a full-time library loan librarian, and we passed that this evening too. Thank you. That was the conclusion of our committee meeting.
Yes, we did meet on April the 6th. Had a very short little meeting. We only had one item on our agenda, and that's an interlocal agreement with the City of Springdale, Arkansas, City of Tawnytown, Arkansas, and Washington County, Arkansas. And that was passed on to the whole Quorum Court with a due pass recommendation. And that concludes my report, Judge. Thank you.
Yes, the Finance Committee at our last meeting, Treasurer Bobby Hill came in and reviewed our sales tax revenue, noting that this is our 12th consecutive month increasing over the previous year for all general sales tax, jail sales tax, and road. He also reminded us of the past 3 years our change in the reserves has dropped by $12 million. We discussed the 4 ordinances we voted on here in 6.1 through 6.4. All of those came through and passed tonight. We had planned to have a discussion on the condition of the road budget in light of the extra expenses we recently had, but nobody was able to make it. Sean's had some family business. The topic will be on next month's agenda, so we'll get that. We expect to have some answers then. And we had a off agenda discussion about the bridge situation. And that is our finance report.
That concludes our committee reports. Next thing we have, Eva.
I forget there's a lot more on the agenda still.
We're ready to go home.
Yes. Steve, would you read 9.1, please?
An emergency ordinance ratifying a conditional use permit granted by the Planning and Zoning Board. Whereas the Planning and Zoning Board granted a conditional use permit on April 2nd for EMS, Electronic Manufacturing Solutions, expansion, and whereas immediate ratification is necessary by the Quorum Court to prevent undue delay and expense to the applicant, and whereas ratification will not affect any appeal rights any person may have, now therefore be it ordained by the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, Article 1. The conditional use permit for EMS, Electronic Manufacturing Solutions, granted by the Planning and Zoning Board is hereby ratified. Article 2, Emergency Clause. It is hereby determined that it is in the public's best interest for this ordinance to be effective immediately, and that the general health, safety, and welfare of the citizens are affected by such for the reasons as set out above. Therefore, an emergency is declared to exist, and this ordinance shall be and is effective from the date of its passage.
Thank you. This is something that the Planning Board passed at their April meeting, and so it was not passed by the time we would have met for it to come through the committee. This is a small-scale manufacturing facility out near Dutch Mills. They've been in existence. They're seeking to do an expansion. The facility itself, Courtney can answer more questions, is pretty isolated. They did not have any objection at the Planning Board stage. I think it was only until it was after the Planning Board had unanimously approved it that they did receive one comment from a neighbor about some drainage that I talked through it with Juliette Ritchie and Courtney McNair, and it seems that the drainage problem is perhaps an existing problem. It's not something that I think the expansion would harm. But nevertheless, planning staff did look into the drainage concern. They had an engineer look at it, and they do not think that it's enough of a concern to worry about it. It's about debris, I think gravel washing, which sort of happens. There's not really a way to prevent that. So I just moved to pass. So we only do this on one reading, right?
Second.
Okay. And then Ms. McNair is here to answer any questions on behalf of the planning staff.
I have a motion and a second.
Yeah, okay.
It's an emergency ordinance, Judge. It takes one. But it'll take 2/3 to pass the emergency clause.
And I think we have to have public comment before we vote. So, but the planning staff has done a great job with this. And this is something, and just one thing procedurally that I learned is that if by chance this person who objected did want to appeal the ruling, our ratification of the planning board's decision here tonight would not affect those appeal rights. So we can ratify it here, and then there would still be the clock ticking on an appeal. I'm not sure, based on what I've heard, that I think an appeal is likely. But just so you know that we're not doing away with anybody's rights to appeal the decision.
Do I have a motion?
There's a motion. I feel like somebody ought to ask Courtney a question since she sat through all this.
She probably doesn't care.
Okay. She sat here for more than 2 hours.
No, we will get to that. So do we have that motion in a second, and we have any discussion? And do I have any public comments? Well, with no public comments, Carla, would you call the roll, please? Thank you, Courtney.
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
John Furman, Ann Harbison, Sharon Lloyd, Tom Lundstrom, Eva Madison, Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell,
Yes.
Joe Patterson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Interlock agreement. Number 10.
10.1 is the resolution I mentioned a while ago about the interlocal agreement to Town to share the expenses of the Springdale District Court. Mr. Zager, if you'd read that for us, please.
A resolution approving an interlocal agreement with the City of Springdale, Arkansas, the City of Town, Arkansas, and Washington County, Arkansas regarding the operational expenses of the Springdale District Court. Whereas the City of Town, Arkansas has a police department but does not have a district court, and whereas the City of Towntown, Arkansas wishes to have the cases generated by its police department prosecuted through the Springdale District Court, and whereas Arkansas Code Annotated Section 16-17-1203 provides that a written interlocal agreement is to be entered in between the City of Town and the governing bodies of the City of Springdale, Arkansas, and Washington County, Arkansas, concerning the contribution to the operational expenses of the Springdale District Court by the City of Town, Arkansas, and whereas the City of Town, Arkansas, and the City of Springdale, Arkansas, wish to comply with the provisions of Arkansas Code Annotated Section 16-17-1203, now therefore be it resolved by the Quorum Court of the County of Washington, State of Arkansas, Article 1, that the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, approves the attached interlocal agreement with the City of Springdale, Arkansas, City of Town, Arkansas, and Washington County, Arkansas, concerning the contribution to the operational expenses of the Springdale District Court by the City of Town, Arkansas, pursuant to Arkansas Code Annotated Section 16-17-1203. Article 2, that the County Judge of Washington County, Arkansas, and the County Clerk of Washington County, Arkansas, are hereby authorized and directed to execute the attached interlocal agreement concerning contribution to the operational expenses of the Springdale District Court, and are further authorized to execute any and all documents necessary to effectuate this purpose. A copy of said agreement is attached hereto as Exhibit A, and incorporated herein as if set out word for word.
I would now move that resolution. I don't think you people are deaf. I would now move that resolution 10.1 be passed.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment? Carly, would you call the roll?
Lisa Ecke,
Yes.
John Furman, Ann Harbison, Sharon Lloyd,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Sue Madison,
Yes.
Joel Maxwell,
Yes.
Joe Patterson, Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery, Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
This resolution has been adopted. Next thing, Eva?
11.1, please, Mr. Zaga.
All right. An ordinance establishing vote centers in Washington County for all school elections in 2015. Whereas pursuant to Arkansas Code Annotated Section 7-5-101, the county may establish by ordinance vote centers for elections, and whereas the Washington County Clerk has certified to the Quorum Court and the Secretary of State that the county has a secure electronic connection sufficient to prevent an elector from voting more than once and to prevent unauthorized access to a computerized registration book maintained by the county clerk, and whereas it is the desire of the Washington County Election Commission and the county clerk to establish duly authorized vote centers for all school elections in 2015, now therefore be it ordained by the Quorum Court of the County of Washington, State of Arkansas, Article 1, They are hereby authorized and established in Washington County vote centers for school elections in the county for 2015.
Thank you. This is actually something I'm very excited about. Commissioner Deichler came to me a few weeks ago and said that our election commission wanted to try something novel with how we conducted our school board elections this year, somewhat as a test. There is some new legislation in the state that allows an election commission to essentially do away with precinct voting, and you could go to any vote center, much like how early voting was conducted in the last election, where you could go to any voting site for early voting, but this would be actually on election day. So if you work in the other side of the county from where you live, you could vote in either place, just wherever was convenient to you. The Secretary of State created some regulations that were a little difficult to navigate to get this done, so it wasn't an easy process for the Election Commission to do all of this. So you have a considerable volume of information that they put together that's in your packet as 11.2, and that's what they actually will have to submit to the Secretary of State's office to get authorization to do this. Coming to us for approval is one step in that process. So what it would be is that it would just be for the school election, so they're not trying it out on a massive election, sort of a pilot test, to have these vote centers. So I'm an old-fashioned voter. I like to paper. When they say paper or electronic, I say paper. I'm also over 40, so I think that the reality is that the people want to vote, or people want to vote the way our lives are electronically, because I think if you see the way voting is trending, it's going more toward people using the electronic ballot and less using the paper ballot. And that's one of the things you have to be able to embrace in this process, because the only way it can work is for there to be all electronic voting. Because otherwise, the way it works is, if you go, the way we do it by precinct is they estimate how many people are going to vote at a precinct, and then they have that number of ballots paper ready. You can't have the ballots for every location at every place. So the only way this works is to do it electronically. I have over the years come to trust the electronic system much, much more because there is a paper backup. It's not like it just goes into the interwebs and is gone. So what we have had to certify is the security of that system and our capability to handle that. So I will let Ms. Price answer any more questions that the court may have. But I think that we need to at least try this for the school elections and let the election commissioners who've worked so hard to get this in place see how it goes, see if this is something that we can do, because I feel that this is the way, this is the voting of the future. People don't want to be constrained with the precinct. People want to be able to go anywhere to vote, and they should be able to, and it would encourage more voting. So with that, I'll open it up if, Ms. Price, you have any statements you'd like to make, or if I got anything wrong. Or
No, you gave a very good overview. I would like to say this won't cost any money to do. We're not asking for any money for this. But because it is a school election, we will be able to offer paper ballots at the polling places as well, because you have a limited amount of races and contests and zones. So that's one reason why we wanted to try it with the school election first. Back in 2013, when we purchased the tablets, that was one of the goals with purchasing those tablets, is that we had secure electronic communication between the polling places so that a voter couldn't vote at one polling place, drive to another one, and then vote there. And we spent a considerable amount of time certifying that at all the locations that we would have open for the school election.
Sharon?
Thank you for coming tonight. I, too, have to get into the 20th century. But my question to you is, are the election commissioners, are they all in agreement with this?
Yes, the election commissioners are all in agreement with it. We've worked closely with the county clerk's office, and so we're excited to be able to offer this. That's one of the concerns we've always had with the school elections, because we consolidate polling places. Different school elections may not happen because they don't have contested races, and so voters are always a little confused, where do I vote? This makes it simple for us to say, if there's a polling place open on election day, any voter can go to that polling place and vote. So we're hoping to alleviate some of that confusion for the voters on election day, especially for our school elections.
Rick.
Yes, Rick.
Regarding your paper ballots, if I understand this right, you're going to have a paper ballot for each school,
Yes,
okay, at each location?
yes.
So will you be actually printing more ballots?
No, actually, we won't. Just a few. What we plan on doing is at the polling places, especially like Prairie Grove, Farmington, Elkins, those polling places where more than likely you won't have a voter from Fayetteville coming to Prairie Grove to vote, we would offer just a limited number of paper ballots at that polling place. But for instance, in Springdale, which has an at-large race, we would have to order a number of paper ballots for Springdale, and so it's advantageous for the Springdale voters to just get to go to any polling place. And then we'd have a small number of those, for instance, for voters in Fayetteville. So it's not a large number of ballots that we would be ordering compared to what we would have to order for a general election. And your voter turnout for a school election is usually less than 5%. So when we're talking about ordering paper ballots, we're really talking about ordering less than 5,000 paper ballots.
Okay, thank you.
Eva? Steve, do I need to make a motion to pass this to the second reading, or what?
If you want it, yes. As a matter of fact,
Because you all need to get this done tonight.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So I need to suspend the rules and advance this to second reading by title only.
I have a motion and a second. Suspend the rules. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
An ordinance establishing vote centers in Washington County for all school elections in 2015.
So now I'll move to suspend the rules and advance it to the third and final reading by title only.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
An ordinance establishing vote centers in Washington County for all school elections in 2015.
So now I move to pass 11.1.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any public comment? I have to make a comment. I'm so excited about this. I handled voter registration for 26 years, and I'm so glad to see us moving into the modern age. Thank you all for your hard work. You've done an excellent job. And I thank everybody. It'll take me a little while to get used to not having my paper, but,
Yeah.
but I'll do it, and I love you for doing it. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and do a roll call. I think this deserves one. Carly?
Lisa Ecke?
Yes.
John Furman?
Yes.
Ann Harbison?
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd?
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom?
Yes.
Eva Madison?
Yes.
Sue Madison?
Yes.
Joel Maxwell?
Yes.
Joe Patterson?
Yes.
Butch Pond?
Yes.
Bill Ussery?
Yes.
Daniel Balls?
Yes.
Harvey Bowman?
Yes.
Rick Cochran?
Yes.
Robert Dennis?
Thank you all. This ordinance has passed. Thank you all for sitting through a long evening.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.
Would you allow me to ask one question?
Sure, go
That's
ahead.
not
She won't-
pertaining to this
yeah,
vote.
she won't care.
I got invited to Evansville. Joel, sorry about this, but I went to Evansville at their request just to join them for a breakfast. And if you ever want to go back 30 years, 40 years in time, go down there. It's neat. It is so neat. The whole community comes together and has a breakfast on Fridays. And what they need is some help to put a ramp in because they cannot get their voters in. Also, they've aged quite a bit, and so they don't have a ramp into the fire department building where they vote. And they asked for help, and I said, well, I'd ask some people that know, so now I'm asking people that do know, because maybe you've got ideas that I don't have, on how to help them with a handicap ramp.
We'll look into that. I know that we have some portable ramps that we can look into taking out there, and I'll contact the Evansville supervisor and work on that before we have our next
Super.
election out
Thank
there.
you.
No problem.
Thank you guys very much. Any other business to come before the court? Harvey?
Hey, guys, I know it's late, but I got a couple of things I want to throw out there to you. I began looking at what would 1 mil of additional taxes cost us as individuals and as a business, and then what the implications would be for income. I thought I knew a little bit about millage, but I found out I didn't know anything. I wound up having a meeting with the assessor, the collector, and the treasurer, and we talked about this and all these different taxes, what we have the authority to do and what we don't have the authority to do, and about the income. I also met with Tyson Foods and George's to talk to them about their attitude about what one mill would do to their cost. They asked me a great deal of questions, and that's why I wound up meeting with those 3 agencies here in the office. As we talked about this, it became obvious that these people that I was talking to were excited about the possibility of coming and sharing the details that we discussed with everybody on the court. With your permission and approval, I'd like to go ahead and in my next Public Works meeting to have them come and let's talk about all these things. It's not anything that we have authority to do, but more of an educational process. Would you be open to us using that time at our next meeting to have them come and do a presentation about the taxes, their implication for how much revenue they generate, and what we have authority to do and what we don't have authority to do? Yes, Sue?
I ask that we please not have a stacked meeting, perhaps, so that it doesn't consume an entire evening.
Well, we
County services canceled last month because of Public Works.
right.
Couldn't the police meet
Yeah.
on a different day?
This I don't think this will be all that long. You go ahead. You have questions over here?
Go ahead, Carly.
We couldn't hear her.
Oh.
Let me say it again. I apologize. I'm obviously getting tired. I was going to say, could we please not have 2 stacked meetings tonight? We take on such a long agenda, and I know county services canceled last month.
Okay.
So would you consider meeting on 2 separate days?
Absolutely. No question
Thank
about it. If we go ahead and find a cancellation, I'll go ahead and talk to these people and try to set that up. Okay. The second issue I've got, guys, when I came on the court, it was really an interesting interlude. Some of the senior members of the court said they'd never been in a meeting quite like that before. I was completely unaware until this year, in February, I think, that I found out that we have operational ordinances for the Quorum Court. However, they're outdated. I would very much like for us to even find a time to completely update those ordinances and look at the way we operate. Currently, I don't think there's any provisions in those ordinances for a new Quorum Court coming on and who is responsible for being sure that the organizational operations are handled properly. You know, for instance, we all know that we're supposed to designate what committees we have. We've never talked about that before. And so I think that for us to go back and do a good review of the Quorum Court operational ordinance would be totally appropriate. If we have to do that in a separate meeting, or if we pick a Quorum Court meeting, or whatever we can do, but that ordinance is something that we need updated and kept current with details about how each new Quorum Court is operated. Can you give me some feedback about that, or do I need to make a motion, or where are we relative to operational ordinance? Yes, sir.
Harvey, traditionally those ordinances come through county services. Unless you were, what I would suggest, and is to bring it to Ms. Madison as an agenda item, and if you want me to work up particular issues in an operational ordinance, and I think those are somewhere in like section 11 or chapter 11 of the of the county code. I'm happy to visit with you about them one-on-one. That you want to make specific changes to the language in the ordinance, I can get with you and you can discuss it in services. Which I think is not necessarily appropriate or unappropriate, but the traditional venue that those things have gone through.
Well, it's just something I was concerned about, and I feel like would be a very valuable addition to our Quorum Court. And since that's in Eva's area, I would ask her to consider going ahead and working with you relative to that, because you know more about the language.
I hope that June will work.
I'm sorry. We're trying to find you something to keep you busy, Eva. Look, I'll be glad to help.
I'm trying to heap on you there.
I can go ahead and make some recommendations as far as my interests are concerned. But, when it comes down to it, guys, it's something I've just become concerned about, that we need good standards. We have Robert's Rules of Order we're supposed to operate by. And we try to adhere somewhat to Robert's Rules of Order. We have other situations here. We need to know what the guidelines are for running the Quorum Court properly. and that's all I'm asking for. Let's get them updated and be sure we know what the procedures are. Thank you.
Anyone else? Do I have any citizens' comments? Joe, I'm sorry.
I think you want to go before me, go ahead, Joe. I'll defer to you.
Right. Push that button right in the middle, sir.
Okay.
There you go.
I've talked to each quorum court member here except two, and I never could get them. Their phone number's not working. So you all know I'm Donald Thomas. I've talked to most of you, and I have some concerns about you all investigating yourself. I worked for over 40 years, and if I ever made a mistake on the job, I didn't get to investigate myself. Somebody else did that. That's just my opinion about it, and I'm afraid you all are going to get some public resistance to this. And I came here with the intention of asking for a grand jury. But you say that's not legal. I don't know if it is or not. You might want to check that out real close. So I think it might be. And another thing, you're overlooking a very important thing that we have to draw from. I worked for the Highway Department over 20 years. We have a lot of registered professional engineers that are retired, and I'm sure that some of them would probably be glad to look into this matter, and it'd be a fair and impartial thing, and it would be outside of everything. It'd be outside of everything. And I'd prefer getting someone out of the county. That's just my feelings on it. And I have talked, like I say, all of you, and about 8 of you are in agreement with me, or said you were when I talked to you, and 1 questionable, and 5 has definitely seemed like against me, or 4. We have, I think, Eva and Sue have done a tremendous work. They've put their career on the line to investigate into this, and I appreciate it. I really do. Appreciate what you all do. I talked to Joel today for a little while, and I think it was today, a day or 2 ago. Anyway, I've talked to several of you, and I've just got concerns about this. I know you've already passed ordinance. I know you already made up your mind what you want to do. I just wanted to express my concerns.
Judge, could I say something that might help him? Mr. Thomas, I did talk to the prosecuting attorney today about the possibility of a grand jury, and I think the difficulty he had was there's not really anything to bring to a grand jury. So I wanted to tell you that I do feel like that option has been explored. I don't want you to think that it's been ignored. I think that's been part of the debate, and I think that prosecuting attorney Durrett did consider that because I discussed it with him today. And I would tell you your suggestion about maybe needing an engineer, I've had those thoughts as I've sat here myself tonight. And in fact, I've met with some engineers as I've been doing this process myself. And I wouldn't rule out, if I were to say yes to be a part of this, to actually having to consult with an engineer to help us. I realize that we've set aside the issue that we're not going to inspect the safety of the bridges. We're not going to investigate that aspect of it. But I do know that having some knowledge of rebar and things like that to actually be able to ask the right questions is of some use in this investigation. And I wouldn't rule out, in my view of how the investigation would be conducted, to actually consult with some professionals along the way. So I did want to say that to you. I mean, certainly if I get to an area where I don't know the answer, I'm going to find it, and I'm going to find it from the right person. So I just offer that to you with my assurance.
Well, I don't know that any of them would do it, but there's several of them that have over 30 years, some of them 40 years experience. So it'd be something that you could draw from. I think it can be a benefit.
I agree. And I have to say that I hope those mules you bought worked out. We were talking about your mules when we talked on the phone.
Yeah. Well, you know, is this just going to be a bridge thing, or is it going to be the whole county road? What are we going to do here? I see cross drains in the road, just driving down the road. They're too long. They're blocking the ditch. Some of them 3 or 4 foot over the edge of the slope. There's no benefit. And I called today, and a 36-inch reinforced concrete pipe is $32.50 a foot. So that means almost $300 for 8-foot jointed pipe. And if we put that many feet in, every pipe that's put in, that'll add up to a lot of money. Now, I don't know why we're doing this, but you can drive those roads and look at them. You don't have to take my word for it. Any of you can do it. And some of the roads that we've built in the last few years are not holding up like some that's been built 15, 20, 30 years ago. I live on one that's been built for 30-some-odd years, part of it for 40. It's in better shape than the one out there.
Sir, I'm going to have to ask you, because usually comments are no more than 3 minutes, and you've gone over, but we do appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other business? Yes, Joe?
I want to congratulate the mayors and all the ones in the county government involved in the ambulance service, because years ago, Judge Hutton had Ken Click-Clack and Jack Norton and myself, and we represented the county and met with Mayor Jordan and a couple others and worked all of this out. And I was concerned whenever we were losing Springdale, changing their policy, that we was going to have a problem, and it had happened in my district as a county. And when I worked on the committee, I never had anyone involved in that because I was all under Springdale at that time. But anyway, everybody done a really good job. I noticed that they got it settled. It's come out fair, better than I imagined. And I want to congratulate them. And I'm just thankful that we have something go good once in a while.
Thank you, Joe.
Some people not need to give up on us, too, and those involved in that. But they've done good. Thank you. Bye.
Tom?
Well, just to add to what Joe said, I've talked to Mayor of Elm Springs, and I think this thing also depends on us continuing to do what we were doing for Springdale. And I would really encourage the Quorum Court to support that, because otherwise this whole thing could kind of cave in on us and cost us a lot more money than it will now. But we have to have ambulance service in Elm Springs, Johnson, and Tawnytown. And out goes way. I mean, it runs all the way to the county line out there. So we've been sending that money to Springdale every year for a number of years anyway. So it wouldn't be any new revenue being spent, but it's just going ahead and supporting our ambulance service the way we've been doing it in the past. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Tom. Any other business?
I got
Yes, Butch.
a question about that. I'm kind of thinking because of population increase, that amount of money we've been paying Springdale might be a little bit more, maybe not a whole lot. Was that not correct?
Ron Wood's been serving on that committee, and Becky will be able to tell you that.
Okay.
But like I say, they asked me the other night, and I told them that I could not commit to y'all appropriating the money. They needed to run that. And I think Becky's coming into the meeting to do a presentation to y'all. Yes, sir.
They asked for the same amount of money that we are dedicated to pay this year. I think it's like $223,000. And then there's going to be a 5-year period where we'll have to add a little bit more for the startup costs for the equipment. And I think we'll bring it up to about $251,000.
Rick?
I can tell you the population by changing the census to the 2010 census and the expansion of the cities going out. I think there's only 200 more people in the unincorporated county between the 2000 and 2010, so the population change is almost zero.
Maybe annexations are not so bad. Any other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you guys very much.